I call Pyrat. All right.
Can you explain Lincoln 5, the mineral deal? No, because I don't believe it's real. I don't believe in any part of it. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think any part of it is real. I wouldn't trust any deal this president signs. I don't think any of them are actually going to come to fruition. I don't believe it. Supposedly to rights to mine some resources somewhere, but I don't think anything will ever come from that. But who knows?
Turn.
Where did this go?
Okay.
Virtual camera.
Whoop. Virtual camera. Give me a second. There we go. Oh. Hold on.
Well, for some reason, this is showing the big U, and I don't know why. Very
Okay.
nice. Now
I think
fix this.
I got mine.
How's your portfolio looking these days? It's fighting for its life, okay? But on my meme stock picks, all right, NVIDIA is dragging us down hard. But we have a champion in our portfolio, and his name is CrowdStrike, and he fights for truth, justice, and my individual stock pick portfolio. He's fighting hard.
Did we do it? Okay.
Kind of.
Okay, sweet.
I'm trying to fix it on my end.
Okay, well, it's working for me, so that's all that matters in life.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. Isn't that what you've learned from being on the internet recently?
Yeah, definitely. That's how it works.
Is that if it works for someone, that's all that matters?
It's all that matters. Yep.
Yeah, so how you been, Thor?
It's been rough.
Yeah, I hear that.
I put everything in Canadian housing. Oh, cool. I would, but I'm not Chinese. Video game. Just kidding.
It's all that matters. Yep.
Yeah, so how you been, Thor?
It's been rough.
Yeah, I hear that. So I don't really follow much
Is his real name Thor? He seems like the kind of guy that would get a name change. I'm sorry.
of, internet drama. So you want to talk about what's been going on, or you want to not talk? Oh, which is totally fine.
I don't even know where to start with it.
His name is Jason.
What's going on?
I think recently have actually been dealing with the ferret rescue. So I guess we should start with that.
Oh, ferret rescue. Wait, how do ferrets need to be rescued? Are those animals that ever live outside, or are they always?
We had, and this kind of ties back into it too. So we had 2 deaths in the rescue this last week, which is rough. And I'm finding, because we're at about 60 ferrets now, we hover around 60, and we lose about 1 to 2 a month because it's a rescue, and that's kind of how it works. You get animals in that are really messed up, really bad position, and that's kind of how it goes. And I'm finding that I can't emotionally connect with every animal. You just can't do it. It's not humanly possible. Right. The ferrets now, we hover around 60, and we lose about 1 to 2 a month because it's a rescue, and that's kind of how it works. You get animals in that are really messed up, really bad position, and that's kind of how it goes.
Okay.
And I'm finding that I can't emotionally connect with every animal. You just can't do it. It's not humanly possible to do that because you're going to lose them, and you can't absorb that at all times. It's not a healthy thing to do. And I've been going through that through the last couple of them, but the last one really messed me up because it was Ghost, and Ghost is she was one of the first rescue ferrets, and this animal was physically abused badly originally. And when I went to go pick her up, she was one of the first ones that I went to go pick up. Normally they give you in a carrier, and the person's all excited, and they're like, "Hey, I'm really sorry, and I feel bad. I feel like a bad person." You talk to them about it, and then they give you the animal, and there's crying and whatever, right? And then you take the animal, and then they want to reach out and know how they're doing everything like this, because it's usually a person surrendering because they just can't take care of them. This one, I go to the house, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here to pick her up," and this person just did this. And handed this ferret to me like this, and it's covered in shit, just feces all over the body. And I'm like, "Do you have a carrier?" And they're like, "Nah." And emaciated, covered in feces, ear mites, visible ear mites. It was awful, and it's just she's scratching herself. She had it was bad, dude.
Oh my god.
Take her to the vet, and we fix her up, and then we find that she is deeply afraid of other animals. She can't be near other ferrets at all whatsoever. Anytime you put her near one, she freezes, and then she bites them and immediately pee and poop, which is not a normal response for a social animal. It's very clearly something has gone wrong. She came from some kind of an abusive household situation. We've never seen a ferret do that ever. And I worked for, I want to say, God, it's 2 years now. It had to be 2 years of working with this animal every day, trying to get her to integrate with the others, and she never would do it. But she was just so sweet, and I just played with her every day because they need.
You see this? Seems like there are some real journalists still around, very few, but they somewhat exist. Hunting Russians for 8 days, exclusive. I'm not gonna watch this kind of time, and Ukraine-Russia's just. I feel like it's just a boring conflict to me because it's so obvious that there's a right or wrong, so there's not as much interesting stuff to dig through. I will say though, real quick, just as a quick thing. There was a lady journalist who was captured, and then they returned her body. I think she was imprisoned for about a year. Her body came back, I think, with the eyes scooped out and the brain removed and part of the larynx removed, and signs of so much insane torture and everything else. This person was, I think she went into Russian territory and followed troops as she was doing journalistic reporting and stuff. Very troubling, insane, fucked up story. But obviously this is not the only one, and Russia is actively doing this ongoing. But yeah, anyway, not good, not cool.
Animal every day, trying to get her to integrate with the others, and she never would do it. But she was just so sweet, and I just played with her every day because they need kind of social interaction. And
how did she respond to humans?
Great, totally fine with humans. She was afraid of being picked up at first, which is kind of common because people don't know how to handle them, and then they get afraid of hands. It's a normal thing. But she's fine with humans. She was terrified of animals. It was very strange. And it's weird, especially with being afraid of other ferrets. It's very odd, right? So it probably a neglect situation where she was just left in a cage with another ferret and learned to be afraid of them because it's all learned behavior. They're super social. So, but a couple of weeks ago, she suddenly started coughing, and it turned out she had Hodgkin-like lymphoma,
Okay.
which is hyper-aggressive cancer. It killed her in about 2 weeks. There's no way out. Couldn't save her. Couldn't do anything. We normally get months for that. We can do chemo, all kinds of stuff, but it just killed her. And going into like,
Do I want to? I don't know how I feel about this take. I don't feel like super married to it, but there is like something that just makes me feel a little bit weird. The idea that in the United States, or maybe even around the world, that there are like people who are suffering and dying from like easily preventable diseases or stuff like tuberculosis or malaria or whatever else. And then in the United States, we're doing like chemotherapy for ferrets. I don't know. I mean, it's, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, I guess.
how that ties in with stuff is we've got people who are really pissed off at me over like World of Warcraft from about 100 days ago. It was on January 14th.
Okay.
And they're mad because I ran out of a dungeon in Hardcore WoW, specifically because our group was wiping.
Thor, can you turn up your volume some?
Is that, I think that's as loud as it can go. What are you doing this one?
Okay.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah, let me see. Because
I'm almost redlining on mine.
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, he's quiet, right? Yeah, so he's saying he's jacked up as high as he can go. So should I turn my volume down and just tell Stream to turn up the volume? He's already.
Oh my God, he's calling his troop. Listen to the way he frames that event, by the way. People are just mad because I was running from a hardcore dungeon that failed and it was every man for himself and, right, the minimizing, good.
Jacked up to 200% on Discord.
Oh, that's weird. Is it your headphones?
He's not listening to you, little bro.
Okay, I can try to do that.
They're saying that I sound good on your stream.
You sound fine to me. Let me see. So they're saying I find volume's good. Okay, they're saying it's fine. So I think we fixed it. You're both low as usual. Okay, cool. Thank you, chat. I don't know. I think he sounds buttery smooth, dude. Like
That's super funny.
Okay.
Yeah, so this whole thing started with like World of Warcraft Classic back in January. And It's part of this thing called OnlyFangs. And you kind of meme around, you make characters, but it's hardcore. So if your character dies, you lose it forever. But it's a character in a video game, right? So we're doing this dungeon, and the call was made to run. But it's kind of before that is we did the dungeon before that in a group, and we failed. And it was like, oh shit, everybody's running, everyone's freaking out, and we all made it out alive on that one. So we decided to go back in. Probably shouldn't have done that. When you have a group that falls apart like that, you probably shouldn't do it again. But we went back in, and on this one, a poll was made that was way too big. We weren't ready for it, and then all of us fucked up. Like every single one of us did, including me. And I talked about it online for it. But there was a pinnacle moment where one of the guys said, run, run, run. So we all ran, because you're letting a guy be a shot caller. And then as I ran, he goes, why are you running to me? And I'm like, I could be a dick right now and be like, you told us to run.
Oh my God, this guy is so fascinating. We're so lucky, or maybe unlucky, I guess, because we don't get good content out of it. But if this guy was involved in like a drama sphere or like relationship stuff or whatever, oh my God, there would be so much good drama. Sometimes people do a thing where what they do is they will give a situation where clearly any person would act the way that they acted, and because of the way they're telling the situation, and then they'll apologize at the end, and it's supposed to elicit sympathy for the person instead of like an acknowledgement that they actually fucked up. So like an example of this might be, hey, I saw that you punched your wife in the face, right? Or something, or can you explain what happened there? And a guy's like, well, so what happened is my wife said she was gonna like murder my kids and my family, and then she was stabbing me to death with a knife, and I was bleeding out and almost died. And so, I swung at her once, and I know I shouldn't have done that, and I'm so sorry for that. People will give like these types of explanations, and it'll be like, okay, well, you're not really sorry, and you know that nobody's going to think that you did anything wrong. There's like a way of doing that. Actually, the meme version of this is like the Reddit post of like, the title will be like, today I told a young woman to fuck off. Was I in the wrong? And then the Reddit post will be like, today I was at a homeless shelter feeding people in need. All of them know me on a first name basis. And then a woman came in and she said, I'm here to steal all the food from the homeless people, especially the children. And as she was stealing the food, I went up to the lady and I said, lady, you need to fuck off. This is wrong. Do you guys think I was too mean to her? And obviously all the Reddit comments like, oh my God, no way, King. You're so good. Oh my God, you're so in the right. It's okay. Like, no, you're fine. You weren't the asshole, It's like, okay, yeah.
He goes, why are you running to me? And I'm like, I could be a dick right now and be like, you told us to run, right? I could just like reflect that, be like, what are you talking about? Like, you did that. And I was like, what do you want me to do for you? right? And I said, what do you want me to do for you? Look at my mana, because it was mostly out of mana, but I had resources that I could have done for it. And I tried to make like kind of a light of the situation, and I was mostly irritated. It was an irritation response, not like a real accurate response. And it turned into this massive meme. And there's people in chat getting banned for it right now even. So for over 100 days now, these people that spam mana gem and you're out of resources and run away from your friends and all this kind of shit. And the thing that's crazy about that is, tying back into the ferret stuff, is when Ghost died, my YouTube got littered with comments saying Ghost died because she was out of mana.
Oh my
and
god.
That
Damn, and he goes full fucking manipulator mode, and he tries to tie in like the ferret rescue stuff. He's doing that. It's like, this is a charity meme that I mentioned. He's trying to tie in like his ferret rescue stuff with the online harassment shit. Jesus, okay.
It's the shit that I'm getting every day now. Because these aren't people that give a shit about World of Warcraft. They're not people that give a shit about those characters. They're not people that care about any of this stuff. They just want to hate me, and they're doing everything they possibly can to do that in the most vicious and fucked up way I've ever seen. And it is thousands of people. It is not a small amount of people. It is thousands.
Jeez.
And I get this shit every day. And then there's people that come in and they go, oh, it's so funny. I just said mana in his chat and I got banned. It's like, yeah, we banned 50,000 people on Twitch alone for this shit. 50,000 accounts so far for that. And about 14,000 have gotten unbanned because they put an unbanned request because they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. It's like, dude, this is crazy. It's been going on for over 100 days now.
Damn.
I think it's like, yeah, so it's about over 100 now. And it's not just that. It spiraled out into other things where people made all kinds of wild-ass accusations on me. They tried to say I was a pedophile at one point because I had a friend back when I was like 19 and they were like 17. We're still friends today. We're both almost 40. And they tried to make up allegations about the two of us, and she had to come out, or he had to come out and say, like, no, this is bullshit. That never happened. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? So, like, we keep getting, like, these... basically, I got gish galloped for a while, where it's like...
What does that mean?
Shit load of weird... gish gallop is like, I say a whole bunch of lies about you, and you can't respond fast enough, so it looks like they're true. Is basically the way that it felt. So it was like a whole bunch of, like, weird accusations all at the same time, as quickly as possible. And it's weird because when you fight against them, I found... Something that's really odd to me is, I've never seen this before on the internet. Normally, when you ignore stuff, it kind of goes away. You can't ignore things now. If you ignore something like that, people immediately think it's true. And when it's serious allegations like that, you have to respond. So immediately responded to it, shut it down. When I did that, there was a very large number of people to go, no one thought that was real anyway. And then there was a whole other group of people to go, oh, you're fighting it, which means it's true. It's like, where is this coming from? It's like the most whiplash, strange behavior that I've seen on that stuff pretty much ever. And it kind of freaked me out, man. But yeah, it's invested internet trolling. Yeah, I think it's the most invested that I've seen with this kind of stuff. It reminds me.
Wait, is he responding to chat when he just said that?
It's coming from. It's like the most whiplash, strange behavior that I've seen on that stuff pretty much ever. And it kind of freaked me out, man. But yeah, it's invested internet trolling. Yeah, I think it's the most invested that I've seen with this kind of stuff.
Okay. Destiny, is that true that you have to respond to allegations? I always call this like the lose. When people start digging up like personal stuff and they make claims against you, you're in a weird world because if you don't respond, you look guilty. If you do respond, sometimes you can look guilty. Sometimes you have to dig out even more personal information to respond, and then people have more stuff to like dig through. It's kind of it really depends on a lot of stuff going on, I guess.
It reminds me a lot of like 2012, which is just like they've absorbed into their personality that they need to kill me by whatever means, right? And
Jesus.
When I say kill, I mean it. Like, I've gotten swatted over this. I've had weird phone calls to my phone where they're trying to like set me up to try to get me arrested and all kinds of shit. I've had death threats, thousands of death threats over this, which is just insane. It's weird, man. Like, I've never seen this kind of vitriol for something that's just so not a big deal, and for such a long period of time too.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious. So first of all, that sounds insane.
It is, yeah.
Like, I've certainly seen that there are people who. I don't think people on the internet realize how much power they have to really like mess up someone. So there's this perception that, okay, if you're like successful or famous, that, I don't know if this makes sense. It's like almost like the things that you have going well in life are in the same HP pool as the psychological attacks. But that's not how it works, right? So like I can have a really, really, really strong biceps, but that doesn't protect me from like Hodgkin's lymphoma. Like it just, like the dimensions of a human being, and maybe people understand this, right? So like you can have some dimension of your life going well, and if some other dimension of your life like goes really, really bad, there's a certain amount of resilience that carries through with like the human body. But generally speaking, having a great relationship doesn't make up for a toxic boss. It can help you withstand it. And I think the other big thing that people don't really appreciate is that, like, when someone has an emotional thing that happened to them, like it sounds like you lost a ferret that you were very closely attached to and had sort of connected with, and when they kind of like attack you in that way, like that's very like hurtful.
Well, I mean, it's intended to be. And like, I think what it came to is like,
how aware do you think Dr.K is that Pirates Retelling is complete BS? Just on my personal thing, and I hope this illusion doesn't break at some point, even though it literally seems to break with every single fucking person I've ever associated with. But Dr. K to me seems like he has the best understanding of people, like in terms of understanding them and cutting through bullshit and like hearing what they're saying, whether it's true or false, or whatever, and able to figure that out in live conversations than any other person I've ever met in my entire life. It seems like he's insanely good at that, like scarily, like so good that I almost think he shouldn't do these conversations publicly because I think it misleads people into what they can expect out of if they get a therapist, that you will ever find somebody who can understand you as quickly and as easily and as adeptly as he can understand people. It sets up an unrealistic standard for literally anybody else to live up to. It's insane, in my opinion.
I can identify that and be like, okay, this is an unreasonable attack. Right? There's kind of like reasonable attacks. You're like, hey, I'm upset at you for like legitimate reasons. This is why I'm upset at you. And we go, okay, cool. We either resolve that or we don't resolve it, and we kind of go from there, right? And then there's unreasonable attacks, which I think that is an unreasonable attack of like going in and be like, your ferret's out of mana. That's why it died. Like that's designed to just it's designed to get in your head. It's designed to fuck you up. There's no someone trying to fix a scenario there. They just want to hurt you, right? And so I kind of package those in different ways. But yeah, no, they still hit you. There's no.
One of the things I say, this is kind of a meme piece of advice that's given, but it's also true, is that you have to be careful sometimes if you're intelligent, you can actually rationalize away your emotions in a very toxic way, in that you're avoiding any kind of true any kind of true introspection, and you're just making excuses. There's a way that people can talk about their emotions where you can tell that they've done some like intellectual investigation, right? Because rather than just saying, I feel this way, like I feel like this guy, you know, he made me feel horrible. Or even like, I feel like this guy is just trying to like fuck with me. When people start speaking in these kind of like these meta abstracted ways, I understand that people do these types of attacks just to elicit this response from me. Then it's clear that the person has done some intellectualizing of things that they've experienced, which isn't necessarily bad. But once you start that intellectualizing, there are always two ways that you can go. One is you abstract it, intellectualize it, and then you try to like integrate it into your own experience, and you figure out like, okay, well, I think people do this. Why do they do this to me? How does this make me feel? And then how can I navigate better? Or you can abstract and intellectualize in ways where you're like, nothing is ever my fault. It's actually not my responsibility at all. This is why people are doing these things, and none of this is anything I ever have to change anything on, you know?
Oh, there's no dodging that.
So what I'm kind of curious about, Thor, is like, so first of all, I don't think that what you're going through is, I guess, justified. I mean, it's not my place to judge, but also like, it sounds like what you did was, I'm still not quite sure. You made a snide comment and then ran away in a hardcore dungeon?
I made a snide comment as we were escaping the dungeon, and 2 people died in that.
Also, Dr. K could be a filthy, disgusting pre-watcher, okay? But, assuming he's not a pre-watcher, so much of the way that Dr. K talks, you can pick up a lot of good tips for how to deal with bullshitters in your own life. If somebody comes up to you, okay, this should be one of the first things you learned, I think. If somebody comes up to you and they're like, God, my boss is so fucking unfair, it's bullshit. And it's like, well, what happened? My boss they hate me for no fucking reason, okay? They always give me the worst schedule. They've made all the other employees fucking hate me, okay? They're like turning everybody against. It's just so horrible. And it's like, okay, like why? Or what did they do? Or what's going on? They lie about me all the time, and they're out to get me, and they just like, everybody believes them for some reason. It's like, okay. These are the types of people that you're like, can I see some proof or show me some DMs? Or you go and talk to other people and you're like, oh, okay, there's a way different second side of this story because something is not adding up. You're giving me a truly exceptional movie tier plot of like manipulation and psychopathy. It is like, is that really what's going on? Or are you leaving out, like a whole bunch of shit that you did that would make this sound more believable? And I can't tell if Dr. K has already picked up on it right here, but when Dr. K refocuses and he's like, okay, wait a second. You're getting this unhinged of a response just because you fled from a dungeon? That doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't seem to line up. Really? Guys, this must happen all the time. Why would you get this type of response for months on end just because you ran away from a dungeon? So he's asking again to refocus, yeah?
I'm still not quite sure. You made a snide comment and then ran away in a hardcore dungeon?
I made a snide comment as we were escaping the dungeon, and 2 people died in that runaway.
Okay.
And that was it. And then all the people this is the funny part. The person who made the rude comment to me at the first place, it was like, why are you running? He ended up getting caught in some other drama with it. They don't even know what happened. And I stepped away from it because I was like, I don't want to deal with any of this. I'm out, right?
Like, that's not even relevant. What does that have to do with anything, right? Because he's trying to demean the character, I think, of the other guy to show even more credibility on his side. Like, it's,
after all that shit. But what ended up happening right after that was it just exploded, man. Like, it just detonated into the sun of just like people being, I feel unreasonably angry because to me, it's like, that's a character in a video game. We just go make new characters. And the whole point, the whole motto for that entire thing was we go again. Your character dies.
That's not even true. He's just, I don't know how much Dr.K knows, but he's just lying about that, okay? Nobody plays fucking hardcore WoW and is raiding or doing dungeons with max level characters. We're like, oh, if we die, it's all cool. We'll just go ahead and reroll. It'll be fine. Like, what? But okay.
So I think that this is where things get like if you're open to talking about this, like I think it could be helpful because I think there's two things that can be true at the same time. One is that the amount of hate that you've received is not acceptable. That I think is true. Like in this moment, I believe that to be true. Like that's not okay. And the way that you are describing the story and the response that you got, there's a big gap there that I think does not.
Yeah. Okay.
So even if it's unfair, it seems like there's something missing to evoke. So what I'm thinking is like if there's a hardcore raid and people die, sometimes there's a weird situation on the internet where it's like Tinder catches fire and then things get blown out of proportion.
Sure.
So there's absolutely like an unfairness to that. But I'm also imagining and thinking about my experiences on the internet.
It's so hard for people to keep both of these things in their head at the same time. Like, it can be possible that somebody is being unfair to you and treating you unfairly, but then you also have to, like, if it's something that's coming up or it's like completely disproportionate, you have to be able to take a look at your own actions and figure out, like, okay, well, what am I doing something that's like not optimizing for my success here or whatever? I remember thinking this a lot after my second relationship, because my second one was was also physically abusive, and despite the fact that it's never okay to obviously hit or attack a partner or whatever, like I have to wonder, like, okay, well, hold on, what? Like 2 in a row, what are the chances? Something is obviously the way that either I'm approaching relationships or approaching partners, or there's some behavior that I'm exhibiting or whatever that seems to be inducing this, or at the very least I'm picking for it. But like sometimes it's really hard because having the second conversation, people will feel like delegitimizes the first conversation, because I think that if you analyze an action to see how you can avoid getting in a certain situation, that you're basically blaming the person, right? It's victim blaming. You're blaming the person for ever being there, and that's not necessarily the case. Right?
And the way that you're describing it seems, so there's no question that things are like objectively, in my mind anyway, maybe I'm wrong here, but there's no way in my mind that you deserve what is happening to you, because I don't believe that someone getting death threats is warranted for anything that happens in World of Warcraft. I just don't think that that's like, I cannot envision a scenario in which those 2 points get connected. And at the same time,
I do understand the route that it carried though, and I can't explain that anyway.
Yeah, so that's because I think that like the nerve that so what I'm getting is that you struck a nerve. You really pissed a lot of people off. And running away in a hardcore wipe, like a hardcore raid that is wiping, I do not think is the nerve that you struck. Does that make sense?
No, it was the fact that I was smug on the way out, because I made like the comment that I made was made with a smug face, right? Because like at that point it was like the group had already wiped once. We were in the process of wiping again, and I'm like, dude, like everybody who's involved in this is screwing up. Why are you calling out just me specifically?
So oh God, he's doing this so well. This is like textbook, quote unquote, bad apology, right? Or sometimes people do this as like a debate tactic, where they'll say like, oh, you know, like this particular action wasn't justified, but then they'll go ahead and they'll give all the reasons for why it was justified, right? So he's saying like, you know, okay, I made a smug comment on the way out, but I mean, like the raid was already over, nobody gave a fuck, like this shit was already fucked, no one cared. It was like, right, it's like, so he's saying like, maybe I messed up, but like here's all these reasons for why I didn't actually, and even if I did, it didn't matter, you know, yeah.
I'm gonna make a smug comment in response. And then it turned into, this is just this guy's fault. It's just my fault. Should have made a smug comment for it. Know that, obviously. But the response for this to be 100 days of this and all these crazy allegations being made against me, doesn't make sense.
So you made, you made the smug comment on stream?
Oh yeah, no, all this was live.
Okay, so this was live. And then was there some kind of aftermath? So usually when this stuff happens, it's like, if things go to Twitter, that's when people, I think, really dig themselves into a hole.
No, I didn't go to, like, I posted a post on Twitter saying, hey, this is all this stuff. I said in there, like, hey, this is, you know, everybody screwed up, including myself. This is everything that was going on. And that was that. And I have the post, if we can go pull it up. Let me go grab it. Whoop.
So what I'm curious about is the people who got mad at you at the beginning. I'm not talking about the death threat folks. The people who got mad at you at the beginning, what were they mad
for?
They were mad that I was being smug. That was like the general initial catalyst for it. The problem was, what I ended up seeing is a whole bunch of content creators, because this is a content guild, they took a whole bunch of clips of me to make it look as exaggerated as possible and then turn that into content all over the internet. And they kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Since there's so many content creators pushing it at the same time to try and get as many views as possible, it pushed this narrative, and that spiraled it completely out of control. And when I say making content out of it, one of those creators actually had his child on video with the face blurred out say, Pirate Software is a disgusting roach. Like, this is wild shit. That's not a small creator. It's like thousands of viewers, right? So you see this kind of shit, and you're just like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, why are you doing this? I get it. That's why I put out the video of, like, anything for views. And it's like, dude, I get that you're trying to do this for views, but you're doing it to cannibalize people around you in the same space as you. That's not sustainable long term. Maybe they don't care.
Transition to, like, career advice and everything. It's like, okay.
It is sustainable or not. But that's fucked up. I don't think there's any other way I can describe that, is to try to cannibalize some of the creators so you can get a quick view. Is nuts to me, man. Especially because throughout that event, I was trying to do things like, hey, let's go make content with this other creator. I was sending our community over to other people. Like one of the people that actually turned around and just immediately tried to turn it into memes and views and everything like that and try and go in on me. We had the whole community go over there and gave him a level 25 hype train. Like, just, hey, you guys should support this dude. He's a smaller stream. He's got like 100 viewers. Go and support him. And everybody jumped over there and it was like $20,000 on hype train, dude. And then immediately switches around and does that shit. And it's like, what? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, so I know this is going to sound weird, Thor, but like I'm getting some missing qualities here. Have you heard that phrase? So,
yeah.
Do you know what missing means? The missing reasons. So I mean, we can take a look at your Twitter post if you like. So I mean, I think we've actually got a couple of options here. So like, I enjoy talking to you. I like you. I respect you. I think that sometimes streamers make mistakes, and at the same time, I think that something about what you're describing feels like there's a chunk that's missing. So I totally,
because it's all disconnected timeline wise.
Okay.
I guess it's hard to describe each individual piece. So
this is like my biggest fear. It should be everybody's biggest fear, is having this big of a gaping hole in your self-perception that you can't understand, like, why you would elicit a certain response out of people, especially if you're an online figure. I feel like you should have a decent understanding of why people respond to you the way that they do, and then whether you accept or don't accept that, like the things that you can do to change how people respond to you. This is why I'm always really critical of people who are like, people can say like, oh my God, I don't get why Hassan is popular at all. I don't get it at all. It's like, really? You really truly don't understand why the second largest politics streamer on Twitch, you don't understand at all why he's popular? You can't even fathom it? Like, that's pretty surprising. Like, it says something about your ability to perceive others, to perceive how people perceive others. Like, that's a very scary world to be trapped in, I think.
Then inside of that dungeon happened. Then afterwards, I got brought into a call with the person who called me out. I left the call because he was shouting over me, and I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm not going to have a fight with you. I don't want to deal with it. And I left. So that kind of made that more. And then content creators started to make a big deal about it. I started to receive death threats in the game from other players. And I said on stream, I'm going to start reporting people for doing this shit. I'm going to go after them. That got clipped, sent out onto the internet. And then when people sent that out on the internet, they tried to say that I was going after other streamers, when in reality I was going after the people who were sending me death threats. And the only streamers that I reported were ones that had done things like said on stream, I'm going to go to Pirate Software's community and harass him because I think it's good content, saying that live on stream, which is like 2 or 3 people. And I don't think that's a wrong thing to report. So they clipped that one. And this all kind of got spread onto Livestream Fail and all these little pieces out of context. I guess the basic way to think about it is, imagine you're driving your car and there's a guy sitting in the side seat. And he handcuffs you and takes control of the wheel, and you just get to watch the car drive. And no one will listen to you saying, "Hey, I'm not driving the car. This isn't accurate." They don't listen to that anymore. They just see your car driving in that direction. So they've taken full control of the narrative at that point. I can't do a damn thing about it. And that's what happened on Livestream Fail. And we get that all the time now too. So like anything that I do on stream, this will probably be clipped out of context and put up on Livestream Fail as well. I'm not really surprised if something like that is. And they'll bring it up and go and do that kind of stuff. Yeah. Does that make sense? There's still more.
I would love to hear what else there is. And I think what bothers me the most about this is making sense for me on 2 major levels. One of which I think is, I'm just debating now for a second, because I think one of the things that I'm starting to hypothesize, I just really have to think about this, could really add fuel to the fire. So I have to think about whether I even want to mention that or not. So let's start with just getting more context.
Okay. Sure. So after all that Livestream Fail stuff went off, eventually it started to kind of fall away. But then anytime anything happened with Livestream Fail, anything, or anytime anything happened with OnlyFans, the guild, I'd get blamed for it. They would think that they thought it was part of some kind of a narrative that I would show back up, and it was like a bit. The whole thing was a bit, and all the hate was a bit. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm out. I don't like, I got kicked from the guild. I don't want to deal with any of this. I don't want to be a part of this. And then somebody actually DDoSed Blizzard in the middle of one of the OnlyFans raids to kill the raiders. So they DDoSed a multi-billion-dollar company, which is wild. Like, that's crazy to me. So they DDoSed that, and then a ton of people dive into chat saying like, oh, you did it. Why did you DDoS OnlyFans? Why did you go after OnlyFans? And then I found out Asmongold made a joke about that, and he was like, oh, it was probably Pirate Software. And I was like, no, that has nothing to do with me. And I said it on stream. I was like, you can't make those jokes. People believe them. They just believe it. It's not everybody. Most people realize that a joke, but some people just believe that shit.
That's
and then they
crazy,
run with
Chad.
it. And that's kind of where that's gone. Yeah. It's one of the most disturbing things that I've seen. And in my chat right now, we're actually banning constant. So this is definitely already up somewhere.
What are you banning people for?
People that come in and say, like, calling me a roach, because the act of running out of a dungeon is called roaching in the game. Still, 100 days. It's been 100 days. People are spamming mana gem, which is the resource item that I could have used in the game at that time.
Oh, no.
Just over and over again. See, they're just getting banned constantly. It's just like a constant stream of bans right now. And I knew that was going to happen.
How do you understand that?
How do I understand what?
Why that's happening so much?
What do you mean? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah. How do you understand why people keep showing up? You're saying it's happening constantly, right? You're saying that...
It happens if I talk about it. It happens if I don't talk about it. This is every day. It's just more right now because we're talking about it.
Right. So I understand that it happens every day. It sounds like it's like awful. I don't think you deserve this. At the same time, I think that if we want to, we can try to understand it.
Yeah.
Is that interesting to you?
Sure. I mean, I think I do understand it. I think it's...
What do you understand?
So when you understand it, there has to be some behavior that you exhibit that elicits this response from other people, which is not the same as saying you deserve it. It doesn't mean that their response is correct or right or justified, but there has to be something going on that you are missing here. There has to be something going on, right?
I think it's become a popular thing. I think that's really what it is. It's become kind of like a signpost on the internet, like, hey, stop by and do this thing because it's funny. And I get that. Like, I understand that. You know,
There's got to be
'cause for a lot
something
of
more,
these
though,
people,
no?
they've never engaged with their community before. They don't know who I am. They're not really interested in who I am. They just want to pop in and say a thing and then get banned. I mean, that's it, right? And some of them are chat hoppers from other communities, from creators that don't like me from that event and have created negative content about me. So they're doing that, and they come over from that community and they think that that's part of it, you know, or they want to be a part of that in some way. Some people describe it as parasocial within the community, but to be real with you, I think it's just people that want to be part of something. And if that something is just hitting me, like, whatever.
Okay. Can you show me that? Do you feel okay? So like, is this what we're talking about today? Like,
I mean, I guess.
I mean,
I don't know how things are going. This is it.
okay. So
Does he really not know or not want to say it? I don't know. When it comes to things like, I don't want to say like narcissism because I don't know if he's actually a narcissist or not. But when it comes to people's inability to perceive themselves like this, I don't know if he is lying to Dr. K. Like, there's a lot of things that could be happening here. He could just be lying to Dr. K because he doesn't want to be honest about it. He could be lying to Dr. K because it's a public showing, right? He's on stream and he doesn't want the audience to see it. He could be telling what he thinks is the truth, and he's just not actually capable of perceiving what's happening. In which case he's lying to himself. He might be knowingly lying to himself, knowing that if he were to spend some time thinking about it, it would be uncomfortable. He doesn't want to. Or he has spent time thinking about it and he just truly can't perceive it. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. I'm not sure. I don't know.
well, I think this has the potential to be great. And the reason for that is, like, I think that there's a lot that everyone who is watching right now can relate to and understand. The thing that I'm concerned about is that I'm going to challenge you in some ways. And the main thing that I'm concerned about is how the way that I challenge you could be clipped out of context, misconstrued, used as evidence that Thor is the worst human being on the planet. Does that make sense? Like, I'm actually, like, genuinely concerned about that. That, like,
I almost guarantee that it will.
right? So then I think we have to make a decision about, so I think that there is a way, I'm hopeful, but I don't know. I think there's a way that if we have this conversation, it can actually decompress a lot of the emotional energy that's on the internet. But I think
No,
a lot
I'd be down
of
to talk about it. 'Cause, like, I'd be down to talk about it because to be real with you, it's not really changing anything at this point. Like, the route of trying to ignore it, route of trying to talk about it, route of trying to reason about it. We've done pretty much everything that I can think of at this point over like 100 days. And like I've sent over to Kronos. Kronos will be there. I sent him the tweet so he can get it over to you.
Okay, let me take a quick look at this. So, because I think this is, like, I'm really sorry you're going through this, and I think there's a lot that we have to be careful about. And also, I think the reason that we're here is to try to have some challenging conversations. So can I actually, while I'm waiting for that tweet from Kronos, I'm going to go grab an iPad because I think drawing here could be helpful.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, do it up. Actually, I need to find out if Kronos is here. Mods, in the emergency channel, is Kronos here?
Why am I not getting any epic recyclers?
Is Kronos not here? Here, I'm just going to send it to him. We'll just do this.
Okay, let's just
I
do
can send
that.
it to him in this channel because I don't know if he's actually here. There we go.
There we go. Can you build recyclers on Novice? Crafted on... No, you have to grab them here. God damn it. Whatever.
Share stream, dude.
Upcycle asteroids? Yeah, I'm doing it. I should just build them
Okay.
epic. Because I have all
So-
the stuff here. I should just do that. That's what I should be doing.
This is going to be interesting.
Just
Okay, here we
talking
go.
about the chair stream that they just got to experience.
I know. It's great. So let me see if I can pull this tweet up. And then I'm going to just switch. I'm going to switch overlays for a hot second. Okay. Thor, let me know, the second that this feels like not a good use of our time, please let me know.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So
Totally makes sense.
this OnlyFans stuff actually sucks. Lots of weird
Oh, yeah,
attack posts.
there's a couple of links in there as well.
Yeah.
They go to the original like posts about this stuff. I think you need those for context.
Okay. So let's take a look at that.
Okay.
And
What?
okay.
Okay.
So to start with, here's my response to the Dire Maul. From my perspective, I didn't feel I could save anyone else with the resources I had left, even with the mana gem and robe cooldowns. Since the call was made, I followed the call and got out as quickly as possible. In every other instance where stuff has hit the fan, a shot caller has called a specific target, and nobody died, you call run, run, run. Okay, Yamato pinned the entire thing on me.
Yep.
Okay.
That's how I felt at the time, and I still feel that way.
Okay. Our party went wrong. Each person in the
think it
group
was
made
good.
mistakes, including myself, to pin on a single person. Okay, hope it was worth it for you. Okay. So this was live on stream, right?
Right?
Yeah, all of it was live.
And so it was also live who made the call to run?
Yes. Yeah, he made the call to run.
Okay.
Okay. And?
Okay, so it sounds like here's the hate raid that you're talking about. Okay.
So.
Thank you so much for...
And we expected, and that's why I wrote in there, I was like, those trying to defend me, don't worry about it. We expected that to last like maybe 10 days. The internet generally doesn't care about things a super long period of time.
Okay.
100 days.
Yeah,
Still
so
people in chat like spamming and getting banned, and like, that's wild.
This is,
I've never seen
you were right, this is wild. So we're going to like try to understand this, okay? So...
Uh-oh.
This is going to be tough. Okay, so let me start with this.
Thor, I wonder if Thor thinks Dr. K is agreeing with him right now. Like it's wild as in your responses. No one can ever figure out why people are responding this way. Or if Dr. K is saying it's wild because you're doing a lot of stuff that you can't perceive. But I can't even tell if Thor's paying attention or if Thor's just reading chat.
So let's say that you do something, right? Let's say you take an action in life.
Literally, he's just typing.
In the response, would you agree that the response that you are getting is disproportionate to the actions that you've taken?
I would absolutely agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Would you agree that the response you're getting is disproportionate to the actions that you're taking? The locus of control here is entirely different between the two of them when they agree with this, because he thinks that the response is disproportionate completely due to outside forces. And I imagine Dr. K is going to make the argument, no, the response you get is disproportionate completely due to your own actions. So they both said yes to that, but they have totally different perceptions of where that, where the origination of that disproportionate response is being caused, or what it's being caused by.
So
It
let's
doesn't mean I was in the right. It doesn't mean I was in the right. But I do think the response is disproportionate.
I'm with you, okay? So I'm going to start by... Huh?
I don't think it's disproportionate on an individual level, to be clear. I think each person individually that responds with that thinks that they're the only one responding with it, or that they don't feel like it's that
He's intellectualizing away different. That's not relevant.
big of a deal because it's just one person and they don't understand scale.
Okay, so I concur with that too. So let's start with a couple of like really basic things. So the first is, I do not believe, this is a judgment that I'm making, you're welcome to disagree, but I think the majority of people who are on the internet, I would hope, can agree that something that happens on a stream involving a hardcore raid does not warrant a death threat. That's my first axiom, okay? The second thing is that
I would hope so.
even if we think you're an asshole, that the amount of psychological punishment you are experiencing is, at this point, sufficient. So, I would encourage everyone who is watching this, listening to this, if shit gets clipped out of context, and because I think this could, go wahoonie shaped real quick, please, if y'all are disseminating information about this conversation, please include this part, which is that we're all human beings who do the best, generally speaking, that we can. Do people make mistakes? Absolutely. Are you allowed to get mad at them? Absolutely. Should you do death threats? No. But also, I
Not me, though.
want everyone who is a hater on the internet to really stop for a second and think about what the hate does to you, right? Like, you're hurting another human being, but like, for what purpose? Like, I think it's just kind of, it doesn't make the world a better place. I know that in the moment you feel like, oh, I want to put someone in their place. Like, I'm like, he needs to be taught a lesson. He needs to be taught, he's like, oh my God, like, you did this. And like, and I understand those feelings. I'm not even saying that those feelings are wrong, but also like, I don't know how else to say this. Like, it's just a bit much. I don't think it's actually helpful in the long run. You guys are doing all this crap to Thor. It's not clear to me that he understands why you're doing it. Okay. And I think that's the first place where we're going to start. Does that make sense, Thor?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I can understand being mad about it at the beginning. Like, I get it. Your favorite streamer's character died. Like, that's going to make you upset. I was smug about it at the time. I get it. I made a mistake in a dungeon.
It's all things. Oh, yeah. It's also the secondary thing of like, it's like admitting to a fault, but not the actual fault. Like, imagine imagine a girlfriend finishes, hanging out with friends, and you said you'd give her a ride home at the end. You said you'd pick her up and get her a ride home. And then let's say that you're supposed to pick her up at 8 o'clock and the boys want to queue up some League, and you end up queuing up League, and then you end up showing up at her place, to pick her up like 30 minutes late. And then when you get there, she's like, what happened? And, you're like, oh, I had to queue some bot lane. What do you want me to say? And you get into a big fight over it because she's like, I told you over and over again, like, listen, if we're going to have one car in this household, you got to pick me up on time, blah, blah. And eventually the boyfriend is like, every time this problem comes up, the girlfriend's she's not really mad that he's 30 minutes late. She kind of is. But it's more so the fact that he was late for a really stupid reason, right? Like, if he would have gotten maybe pulled over for something that was out of his control, or if there was like a car accident or whatever, she'd be like, oh, okay, it's fine, I get it. Or if his mom was sick or something, right? But it's the fact like you queued up games with the boys and then you just left me over here for 30 minutes. Like, what the fuck? But anytime the boyfriend would bring up that situation, he's like, I get it. I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad. I'll never be late. I'm sorry. I'll never be late picking you up again. Okay, my bad. Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was late. Okay, it's like, no. it's a weird situation to be in because he's apologizing for like kind of the thing, but that's not really the issue. He's not really apologizing for the thing that was triggering her. And it's just like owning to a smaller wrong to avoid admitting fault on the central issue is like another thing that people do. And he's right. People aren't just mad because you were smug about a thing one time. That's not really what's happening here, you know? Why do you think he has a lot of hate over the months? I don't watch too much of his stuff, so I can only go by stuff that I've seen on like LSF and stuff. But I would say just the impression that I get from him, like the type of character that he is, it really, really, really seems like he has a massive fucking ego. He just comes off that way as being very ego driven. And I don't know if he necessarily has the record to back up that insane ego. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily deserved. I don't even know if he could have a record to back up what he's saying. And there's also like a way of, I'm trying to understand. Fuck. He has a type of personality that's very hard to put your finger on, like why you get a certain feeling from it. I don't want to say repulsive because that's too much. That's mean. But there's like, you have a person who brags a lot about what they do. Like, hey, what's up? What's up? Just came from making a $5 million investment into a conservatory for animals, and everybody there worshiped me and praised me, and you know, blah, blah, blah. There's that kind of person who brags a lot about what they do, and that person is annoying. It's annoying when people are bragging all the time and are very whatever. But this isn't that. It's more of it's when somebody, I think this is like one issue. There could be others with him, but it's when somebody is doing a way to like subtly brag about things in a way that you can't really call out, and in a way that is obviously there to brag, but like it just feels very So you ask somebody like, hey, can you cover dinner tonight, or do you want to go 50-50? And the guy's like, oh yeah, hold on, let me check real quick on my bank account. I just made a $5 million investment in like this thing. One sec. Yeah, I can cover tonight. We're good, right? It's like that kind of feeling where they're like offhandedly kind of bringing stuff up, and it's like, really? They just like happen to bring up all these things that make them sound so good and so cool constantly, and they're like, they kind of play it off like this, and it's like, wait, I understand, I'm not retarded, I know what you're doing, right? I feel like he has that kind of demeanor a lot. I think there's other stuff going on too. I don't think this is even maybe the biggest thing, but it's one thing that I perceive, and that I hate it when people do it. It triggers the fuck out of me.
The dungeon didn't go well. Everyone, like 2 people died. Like, I understand being angry then. I don't understand thousands, and I mean thousands of people 100 days later still on it. Like, that's really weird to me. That's not something I get, right?
So this is going to be a little bit tricky. I'm wondering if there's some way that I'm going to play around with.
Oh yeah, no, they're piloted now.
That's okay. So I'd encourage everyone who's watching this right now to just give Thor a break for just a hot second.
Oh, and if you are actually fucking up or making mistakes on top of that, then you're, then people are really not going to like you. If you're actually like incompetent, then you've basically transformed into, you're like this person.
Let me introduce
The Gilderoy guy,
my assistant, Professor Snape.
but more subtle.
He has
But he's like this guy.
sportingly agreed to help me with a short demonstration. Now, I don't want any of you youngsters to worry. You'll still have your potions master when I'm through with him. Never fear.
But then he's also kind of incompetent, but...
Second. And don't just reflexively knee jerk like, okay, like we're going to talk. Can you see this?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
It is now on stream as well.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so hopefully this isn't too laggy because I think I'm just doing a ton of screen sharing. And
My UI is not the best for this.
Okay, hold on. Then here's what I'm going to do. What I'd like you to do, Thor, because I think this is a bit too much for something going on with my capture. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, Thor, is pull up my stream and mute it, but watch the iPad on my stream. Can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, cool. Because when I screen share with you, I just start lagging too much. Or actually, maybe this will. Okay, so let's start with this. Over here is death threats.
Got it.
Okay, over here is your actions. And the other thing that I want to do here is, like, we're going to use you as an example. But I think that, like, literally every human being on the planet could benefit and is guilty of what I think you were, quote unquote, guilty of. So I think there's a fundamental thing going on here, which, like, I think once...
All behavior that is pathological, everybody exhibits it to some extent. Meaning, if you look at, like, clinical levels of narcissism or of... of just any type of behavior that you would pathologize. Like everybody does it to some extent. Things like ADHD even or whatever, or any of the like BPD, bipolar, whatever. Like everybody has some degree of this. It's just like in lesser quantities. So
or quote unquote guilty of. So I think there's a fundamental thing going on here, which like I think once people understand, my hope is that every human being who is watching this, I have a couple of goals. One is to hopefully develop a little bit of compassion towards you. But the main goal that I have here is to try to offer some potential, because I don't know if I'm right here, okay? Some potential insight into the gap between what...
Oh my God, that's such a good quote by Trainwrecks, the philosophy god. The quote is, it's when there are people that have an ego, and then there are people who have an ego about not having an ego. True. Actual true. Actual truth. Big true. Yes.
Develop a little bit of compassion towards you. But the main goal that I have here is to try to offer some potential, because I don't know if I'm right here, okay? Some potential insight into the gap between what happened to you and the response that you receive. So the first thing is that this is disproportionate, right? So
Yeah, I can see that.
what they're responding to is something in here, in between your actions. Like you're evoking a response. So here's your actions. And then there's some kind of equation that maybe has let's call it a multiplier. And then over here we end up with harassment. So does this make more sense? Like if we want to understand why this is happening to you, how this is happening to you, there is some, hello? Can you hear me, Thor?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, you're roboting out really hard. I think that response was like 15 seconds ago.
Okay, so let me see.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Oh, no.
I wonder if, let me try.
Yeah, his internet is dying.
Oh boy. That's terrible. Give me a second. Let me see if I can fix this way. Hold on. Chat.
People are Puggy Gups, our resident Trumple in Kick Chat, our wonderful mod, is talking with somebody else about like why people are mad. It really doesn't have to do much with the situation. It just has to do with how he's responded to it and kind of the character that's been demonstrated after the behavior, right? That's the big issue that he's having, whether or not he's capable of seeing that or not. I joked about this last night on Anything Else with Dan, but like, because I kept complaining about how fucking annoying this was, but it's really a compliment because of how good he did this. I've said this before, and I'll say this again, because I try not to expect from other people things that I could never do myself. I don't expect anybody to own up to anything in the heat of the moment. I just don't. I can't do it. If I'm arguing with somebody, I'll always be. It's just so hard to like shift into that. Like, okay, fuck, I'm wrong, or I fucked up, or whatever. It's just so hard to do that in the heat of the moment, right? So I always give somebody a few days or a week or whatever. It happens. So Dr. Lupo was very clearly cheating, very clearly running an engine, very clear, like it was just obvious he fucked up, right? And he went through he did the denial and everything, and then he said, oh, fine, maybe I read chat or whatever. But I think it was the same day, right? Eventually, I think he says, listen, I cheated, I used an engine, it was pathetic to defend my fragility, I shouldn't have done it, it was bad. And then that's it. It's over now, that's it. Like, what are you gonna attack him on now? Like, he admitted it's fully, like, that's it. Like, there's not, like, that diffuses any future hate. Like, people might bring it up in the future, of course, for whatever reason, which is fair. But at least in the moment, and then now going forward, like, there aren't going to be people perpetually being like, oh, and then he denied, blah, blah. It's like, nah, he owned it. And I think it was even the same day, too. He owned it. He said it was pathetic. It was it, So that was good. It was good on him to do that. In the face of all the public backlash and everything, too. So, but fuck, I'm not going to be able to find it now. Okay, whatever. Don't care. Or maybe it was the next day. People were saying it took it 24 hours, so. I think it was this. Was it this?
It's okay. Like I said before, I cheated and then lied about it, and paying the price, man.
Randy,
take a break out of this?
hopefully,
I'm good.
hopefully, there's containers in this game that comes out, because fuck.
Yeah, also...
Oh, there was another clip. I'm too lazy to find it, but yeah.
Can you hear me now, Thor? Testing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I wonder if... let me see, just make sure that...
I can hear you, but I don't think you can hear me in real time.
Okay. I'm going to just change... Can you hear me now?
What percentage of pirates' unlikability / off-putting nature just assume being really weird looking, almost like a human ferret? I think there are people that need to spend way more time outside. He looks like a normal person. People get weird where they don't like a person. They start saying the person looks ugly or weird. He looks like a normal human being. You're unhinged, but
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can we count in sync? 1, 2, 3,
Okay,
4.
so it's about a 5-second delay.
Oh boy. Hold on. Hey, what's going on?
I like that he has like people.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, I have stopped. Okay, is this better? Thor? Testing 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
You good? Okay, so now we have mostly in time. So
Okay, okay.
It's like less than a second delay.
Okay, cool. So I think this is pretty normal, and we're going to get back to it, okay?
Wow.
So if we look at, let me go back to this.
It's his son. He's pretending.
Let's see if this works. Oh, and
I'm going to grab your stream and then bring it up on here so then we can see what you're drawing on my stream.
yeah, give me just 1 second. There we go. Okay, so I think I'm back to, yeah, just pull me up on the stream. Okay,
Yeah.
so if we look at it, right, so there's your actions, and then there's like various amplifying effects that result in the level of harassment that you receive, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I can understand that. Completely.
So, and then let's like toss in, like there's another variable here which is like memeing. There's another variable here which is like momentum. There's another variable here which is like content creators hopping on. Content reactions, right? So each of these things is an amplifying effect. Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you, in your gut, do you think that this plus these things is sufficient to explain, not say that's justified, but explain what you are going through?
I don't think so. Because I think the internet would have given up about it.
I completely agree. So I think there's a big
it's
variable.
too long-lived. Yeah.
There's a big variable. You've tapped into something that people
I still think there's an external versus internal for control here, but we'll see.
really don't like. Okay? So, and here's what I'm kind of hearing. So I'm going to just like write some things out here, okay? So these are just kind of things that you've said. And I wonder if this will like, if something will click. Okay, so first thing is that there's death threats. That's bad.
Yeah.
There's banning a lot of people. There is ghost dying. There is
Yeah,
people
that wasn't even the first time that happened. by the way.
trolling
Ghost
you
was
about
just-
this.
Ghost died multiple times.
Yeah.
There's people calling you a pedophile.
I find it odd that so many people send energy on the guy because they don't like him, no matter how justified. No way I'm going to care enough. That's one thing that I wish I could understand better. I just don't have that part, I guess, of my brain or whatever. I don't think everybody on the internet does. But yeah, the propensity to consume so much content from somebody that you just super fucking hate, that's like totally outside of your wheelhouse. Like I can get it if they're like in your industry, right? Like let's say that, you know, you make music and there's another guy who makes music in your industry and, you know, you hate listening to his shit. You're like, God, this shit sucks, whatever. But people who are just like, it's totally outside of anything and they're just like obsessively hate watch, like, why waste your time? Why not watch something you enjoy watching? But, you know.
There's someone's kid calling you whatever.
Yeah, the roach thing.
Okay. Right. And then the other thing is there's your like making
Why do so many ferrets die around him? True.
sense of it. So there's like kind of this gish gallop. There's, you said something about these people, like ... Like, you know, these people are like, why are they doing this? Like you were talking about like what these people.
The best way that I put it is, it seems like some people think that they want to be a part of that because it's something that's like greater than themselves. Like they're part of a story, they're part of a narrative. A lot of people that were engaging with OnlyFans stuff were seeing it as like being part of that. And they kept,
Okay.
there were some of them that kept coming back and saying like, when are you going to jump back in and go and kill the people that called you out in that dungeon? And like, they thought it was like a story and they didn't realize like, this is not like a reality show. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right. So I think there was a lot of that, which I also didn't expect that. That was really, yeah, they thought it was like WWE. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Okay. So like you think that they think it's WWE, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They think it's like a show, right? They don't think it's real.
Okay.
And then, so then you use this car analogy of like, someone else is taking control of the car.
Yeah.
And then I'm not driving. I'm being punished. Someone else is responsible. Does this make sense?
I would
Right.
say someone else is fully responsible, but I think with that level, yeah.
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 So when I
'Cause you
write,
can't control it. And when I say like someone else has grabbed the wheel, it's more like that's not what happened. Here's what happened. But like, I guess the basic way to put it is like if you're having a conversation with someone, they make an accusation at you. They say, you're a terrible person because of this thing. And you go, well, I didn't do that thing. And they go, that's just what a person who did this thing would say. Like, where do you resolve that at that point? Right?
that's a great question.
that's-
So do you know people, or have you heard of people who get accused of things and say, I didn't do that thing, but there are other people who continue to insist that they did that thing?
Yeah, it's called Every Day That Ends in Y on the internet.
Okay. What about things that are not on the internet?
I don't know. Like that seems like a pretty normal thing among humans.
Yeah. So has there ever been someone in your life that you felt was like had done
I can't see anything. It's too small. I can't read it either. It's in cursive. You'll live.
something and you were really confident that they had done something and they were like, that's not really how it happened?
I was confident. Like I felt that before in my life. Yeah. And then I either want like proof or not proof. If I don't have enough proof, then like I'm not gonna. What am I gonna be mad about at that point? I guess is the basic way that I usually feel about that. And like if I have an accusation against somebody, I'm gonna be like, hey, this is how I feel about this. And then they go, hey, well, here's evidence to the contrary. Let me talk it out. That's generally how that is. I think when I was younger, I was a lot worse at that. Obviously, that's something I think that you learn over time is like how to conflict resolve in a way that is sane, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So is sane.
When I say is sane, I mean more like conflict resolve based on things that are provable or not provable, not
Right.
just gut feelings.
I'm with you. And how does that work out?
Well, when I'm talking to people who are older, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I find that there's very few people that are younger that can have conversations like that. There are still ones that will.
Wow.
But I find like usually people past their mid-20s is when they start to be able to do conflict resolution better.
Wow.
Okay.
Want more of a trust but verify kind of approach, which is like, I trust that you're telling the truth from your perspective, but I need to verify your claim before you get mad, right?
Okay. So I want you to just like, we're going to tunnel down into that for a second. Okay. So let me just understand this. So like people who, your method of conflict resolution sounds super reasonable, right? It's like, if you've got proof, then you push forward. If you don't have proof, you kind of let things go. And then when I ask you, how does that work? And you're like, well, if people are mature, it works great. But if it doesn't work for them, they're immature.
I wouldn't say they're immature.
I know you wouldn't say that. I'm using that word. You use the word young. But I think the implication of that is that there's like a
People either understand what you're saying because they're mature enough, or if they disagree with you, it's because they're immature. Yeah.
value judgment on people who that works for, and a value judgment on people who that doesn't work for.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, I absolutely do a value judgment. Like when somebody comes in and goes, you're this, this, and this. And I go, no, I'm not. And they're like, and then they just spew a bunch of vitriol. I just ban them, right? Like that value judgment at that point is like, okay, this is a person that is not able to have a normal conversation. They don't want to have a normal conversation. They just want to spew some like garbage. They don't care what's true. They just want to fight about it. And then I don't want them here, right? And that's where I do that kind of evaluation of like, are you cool enough to like, are cool-headed enough to have a conversation, or do you just want to shout what you saw on Reddit? You know, that's really what that is.
Wow.
So what is you? So this is the trolling that you receive is fine, but for the people who got upset with you, what is your understanding of the most rational reasons why people got upset with you? Let's forget about the trolls for a second. Huh?
You know, 100%. It's because I was smug, right?
What does
Like,
that mean?
It means that in this situation, in that moment, it appeared that I didn't feel remorse. And people thought that I didn't apologize. They thought that I didn't care. They thought that I...
It's interesting how narrow he defines his smugness. And I think he's done this almost every time he's brought it up. In that situation, in that moment, I was smug. This doesn't say anything about my overall character, my overall level of smugness. It was just in that situation, in that moment, I was smug.
It appeared that I didn't feel remorse. And people thought that I didn't apologize. They thought that I didn't care. They thought that I wanted those characters to die or some weird shit with that. But no one stopped to actually ask me. They just saw the clips out of context that made it look like I was a big villain, right? And like, I get that. But if you want to talk about that stuff, if you want to believe that, you should probably just come ask me.
So hold on a
And
second.
talk about it.
How do you know that they formed their opinions based on the clips?
You get legendary dirt.
Because they repeat verbatim the same message over and over again that we can only find on places like Livestream the Reddit. It is copy-pasted information.
point of
The same
legendary
exact
dirt?
messages, the same exact thing. They had like the same phrases over and over again for this kind of stuff. And the only way that you get that is if people are getting it all from the same source.
Oh.
Okay.
You've done more than during your retreat? Yeah, and I said so in social posts, but nobody cared about those. I think that was one of the weirdest things about it is like, I said, yeah, I could have done more in this. I said everybody made mistakes in there, including myself, but no one cared. They
Okay.
just wanted to continue the drama.
So
right?
Thor,
I even said everybody made mistakes, including myself. Jesus, dude. Yeah.
when I point this stuff out, do you notice anything with all the stuff that I've written out? Like, does anything kind of pop to you or not so much?
Trying to deflect from like personal ownership over something, but I don't think I'm doing that, so I'm not sure.
Why do you say that?
Because you put I'm not over on the right side?
Okay.
Yeah. That'd be the only reason for that.
Yeah, so I think I think your assessment is somewhat correct. I think there's like a couple of things that are like blind spots, is what I would call them. So the first is that I've noticed that this is what's so tricky about this. I think that objectively you're correct. I don't think that anyone deserves the degree of harassment that you've received.
Dr. K is good in that he always harps on this point. Like, he's very smart to keep harping on this so that it can't be misconstrued by the audience or by Thor. It's important, yeah, because he's a human as well. That like, hey, I'm not saying you deserve people to act unhinged towards you. I'm not saying that like you've earned this response or that people are right in the way they're responding to you. But
I hope people stop I really wish they stop. And I mean that genuinely. And at the same time, I notice just the way that I hear you speak, I notice certain blind spots or narratives that are constructed. So the first thing that
I'm
you...
nervous about talking about it, to be clear. Like, it's a defense mechanism.
Oh man, even the meta. Oh, he's even intellectualizing this. The meta intellectualization. Like, okay. Why? I'm trying to understand why I have this feeling and how to explain this. So, like, are you aware of what you're doing? And instead of being aware of what he's doing, he's intellectualizing the awareness, right? Like, do you understand that you're missing something? And it's like, yes, I understand. I'm actually deploying a defensive mechanism right now due to the fact that I'm uncomfortable, as anybody would, having this conversation in front of a whole bunch of people. It probably accounts for, you know, some lack of my ability to perceive my own flaws and faults, I'm sure. It's like, hold on, wait, what? Hello?
Entirely because of the fact that this has been going on for so long. It involves all of my staff. It involves my family. It involves...
Oh, and now he's also justifying why he has this response again, showing that he isn't really understanding the blind spot. Yeah.
General well-being. It involves my physical security at events. It involves all that stuff, and it makes me nervous to talk about it. So it's hard to articulate.
Oh, Jesus! I'm sorry. His meta-analysis is even less perceptive than I thought. I'm sorry. I thought he was just saying that he was nervous to talk about himself publicly because it's hard to do introspection publicly, which it is. It's very difficult. It's hard to do it privately. It's hard to do it among friends. It's very hard. I can't imagine. Well, I guess I can because I've done it. It's very, very difficult to do publicly. But he wasn't talking about the introspection. He's just saying he's worried about doing it publicly because he fears for his safety. Well, damn, how can you attack that, right? Okay, well, that's legitimate, right?
Being it involves my physical security at events. It involves all that stuff, and it makes me nervous to talk about it. So it's hard to articulate in a time like that without... I don't know. It's just hard to articulate, if that makes sense.
Okay. So that begs two questions. One important one, which is, are you sure that we should be talking about it?
Well, I mean, it's already too late.
No, it's not.
I'd rather talk about it.
No, it's not too late. We can stop. We can stop right this second.
I would rather talk about that, and
Okay.
the reason why is because I find, and this is a very serious part, right? I find that if you don't talk about this, it's not going to help other people, right? Like, I get it. I'm going through it right now. But this is something I think needs to be talked about because the amount of...
Oh, my God. And he's martyring himself. He's martyring himself having this conversation. Wow.
hate abuse that's going on from this isn't just going to happen to me.
Okay.
I know that's...
Do you consider yourself as a Trump hate watcher? If so, do you get enjoyment out of it? No, I consider myself to be a political streamer who talks about politics, and Trump is the president of the United States, so I feel like it's...
Because the amount of hate abuse that's going on from this isn't just going to happen to me.
Okay.
I know that's
Also, sorry, last thing. Is there any point to collecting legendary ice? Like, aside from making these science packs, is it the fuck?
I think that you are pretty unlucky here, but I think you are the unlucky person who has tapped into something very fundamental in human psychology that has like triggered the shit out of people.
Likely, yeah.
Okay, so I want you to notice what just happened. Okay, so it's now that you're insisting that we talk about it. Fair enough. I said, hey, I'm noticing something about your narrative, and what was your answer?
That was like deflecting.
What do you mean?
It's unless we're talking about something else.
No. What we just talked about. I said, hey, I'm noticing something about your narrative, and then you said what?
Yeah. That I was like deflecting or trying to push off blame onto somebody else.
Okay. Yes. And then what did you say after that?
I don't remember.
Okay. So then what you said is the reason I'm doing it is because I'm anxious.
Yeah. Oh, 100% anxious.
Right. I'm worried.
There we go. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is that like you're doing something really interesting, which is that like you provide a very logical reason, which is very compassion inducing for why you are doing the thing that you're doing. Right? So, like, who in their right mind, when you say, yeah, the narrative that I'm creating is because I'm afraid for my physical well-being, like,
Yeah.
how is that challengeable?
Exactly.
It's not.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think what you are doing is something that is, I don't know what word to use, has a negative valence to it. You're doing something that's bad, and the way that you respond to it makes it unchallengeable. Like, you're doing this thing over and over and over again.
Okay.
Right? So the way that you're...
would be
Huh?
negative about that, though.
What?
That's what I'm trying to understand. I said, what about that is negative?
That's a very excellent question. So now we get to something really interesting about human psychology. So if I'm pissed at you, and you take away my reason to be pissed at you, what do I do?
You get pissed, more pissed.
Absolutely. So how...
So you're saying that basically it's created a bunch of anger, and that by having a situation and talking about it and showing like, hey, this is what's going on, it's created a scenario where people are more angry because they don't have a vent and a way of getting it out.
That is where we are... Hold on. let me
Really?
just fix this real
But
quick.
kind of, but...
Oh. because I wonder if you're going quiet again. So I just checked you. So I think that is the first step to it, right? So there's something that there's something that people, deflecting is maybe a good word. There's something that you're deflecting that then triggers people to like, because they're not getting what they want from you. Does that make sense?
Yes. So there's an alarm going off.
So now the question kind of becomes like, I don't know if this sort of makes sense, but I think when I hear your story, what I hear is, and this is what's so tricky about it, is like, I think everything you've said is logical because you kind of base things on sort of proof, right? But I'm noticing that like the way that you accept responsibility is like 1% of what your narrative is. So you say that you were smug.
Yeah.
Right?
I was super smug about it.
And
yeah.
I think that feels like a tiny, tiny, tiny part
Concession?
of your narrative.
But it's not.
I think it's only a tiny part of the narrative because it's the flashpoint. It's the moment that started, right?
Sure.
So it's hard to make that larger in the story. But yeah, I was
no,
smug.
I mean,
was smug about it.
I think it sounds to me like, and like now I'm going to say something that's like, this isn't, I don't know what better word to say. I think it's not the flashpoint. I think it's the fuel.
Okay.
So I
think that was a catalyst for something else.
I think this sounds judgmental, but I think the way that you responded in that moment, so you said early on, you made some kind of like joke, right? Where you, like someone said run, and then you said, I don't want to piss them off.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a joke instead of saying, bro, I ran because you told me to run. You remember when you said that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that there's like little things that you're doing that, so if I made the call to run and then you ran and then I was like, bro, why are you running? And then you say you made the call to run. How is that? Why would you not say that? Right? Like the reason I'm doing this is because I was listening to you.
Yeah, no.
Dr. K is saying this is all logical. Is that right? Or is he just making a concession to move the convo forward? Like if this guy is failing to account for / recognize his mistakes, then he must be doing something actually wrong now. When we say logical, what Dr. K is saying is it's a shorthand for strictly deductively true, but kind of missing the central point. I usually, the way that I've expressed this recently is I'm saying that you're missing like magnitude. So for example, in the earlier hypothetical I gave, where you pick up your girlfriend late from her friends or whatever, right? The argument could be that, well, she's mad because you picked her up late, but not really. That's not really why she's mad. She's more mad because you picked her up late for a really stupid, shitty reason. That's the actual rage-inducing thing. And they're quite different, because if you find a way to only apologize for the small thing and to not acknowledge the larger thing, the other person is always going to come away from that feeling unsatisfied.
Legitimately, that's the one thing, and I've talked about this before, is like if I would have just turned around and be like, you told us to. If I would have just said that, I feel like this whole thing would not have been like this.
Like he's missing the point so unbelievable. That is so incorrect. He's missing the point so hard right now. That's crazy.
I agree. So I think that the interesting thing here is that I suspect that there are a dozen other things like that. So just the way.
Okay, so when Dr. K says he agrees that he could have responded that way, but the issue is not that it wasn't just that one response, because Dr. K says there's probably a lot of things like this. It's the way that he moves through these situations, or it's a character issue. But
I feel like this whole thing would not have been like this.
I agree. So I think that the interesting thing here is that I suspect that there are a dozen other things like that. So just the way that your narrative sounds to me, and let me know if like this is rubbing you the wrong way, or like you think I'm an asshole, or if this is like please let me know. But I think that something about this story has something that I would call the missing reasons.
Okay.
I'm not
saying, for me, it's whatever it is, it's a blind spot.
Yeah.
Because like for me, I'm just like, this was me being smug, and it exploded out of control. And for me on this side, it just feels like a lot of content creators leaped onto it because it got popular to talk about. It became kind of like an it issue, and it generated a lot of views.
Yeah. So
it just kind of went nuts.
And so I want you to just pay attention to that for a second, because you're doing it again. Why did this blow up?
other people.
Because I was smug?
No.
I don't understand what you're trying to say.
Why did it amplify? Who's to blame for the amplification?
Not me.
The amplification I could generally say is Reddit and other content creators. Like, I feel very steadfast in that opinion on that. I don't think this would have reached the audience that it did or become as large as it was on the internet without that. So you're talking over 100,000 viewers worth of people.
Yeah, so that I think is 100% true.
But not really relevant to what he's asking.
Is indicative of what the problem is, right? Because what happens, what I'm noticing that you're doing is like every step of the way, you made one tiny mistake. But the way that you are reacting, I don't think a fire can get this big without a content creator's interaction. And the way that you're responding to each of these situations is only fanning the flames. And I think, like, you're saying this, right? Like, you've tried everything. Like, you've tried
doing nothing.
You've tried doing nothing. You've tried doing everything. And nothing seems to be working, which I know seems like nothing is working. But if you are consistently getting the same result and you are altering certain variables, in that equation, what that implies is that there's one variable that's not being altered.
Yeah, and that's why I look to the outside source, because I'm like, I've altered the way that I interact
But
online.
the outside source is relatively consistent because people go through drama all the time. And maybe this is a leopard that ate my face moment. Maybe this is a moment where I can say this now, and a month from now, when I'm in your position, I'm going to be like, holy shit, was I wrong? Right? Like maybe this is not the way. But your whole point is that the amount of hatred that you're receiving is disproportionate, not only to what you did, but is even outside of the norm of what other content creators experience. Like,
Yes.
I've been through shit. I've had people get on my case and stuff like that, and then stuff usually calms down, right?
Yeah,
For
no,
most people, most of us, we all get these kinds of problems where people like are really mean to us. I don't think they understand. No snowflake thinks it's responsible for the avalanche. But what I see is a guy who is, everyone thinks they're snowflakes, and you're getting swamped by an avalanche. They don't understand that. I think people on the internet don't now know how to understand it until you are on the receiving end of hate from thousands upon tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, and people who are just piling on. Once the bully starts kicking you when you're down, the internet is like 1,000 other people who are like going to get in a lick because it feels good. And I think you're doing something that is like absolutely hitting a trigger point. And I suspect that what you're getting into, just with the way that you describe things, it's very much like I did this tiny thing, and then all of this stuff is happening to me that I don't have any influence over. And objectively, these people are wrong. Objectively, I'm correct. And when someone does that and says, I am objectively wrong, I mean, I'm objectively right and you are objectively wrong, this is not what happened, this is what really happened, and by the way, all this shit is happening to me now, it's like a very like, it's a very, like, you kind of get what I'm saying? I'm trying very hard not to say certain words.
I don't see it that way, though. Like,
I know
don't see
you
it as,
don't.
like an objective,
That-
objective, subjective that. I see it as,
That's the whole point.
it's more of a deep emotional response from people that don't care about me or they don't care about resolving the situation. They want it to continue in some way.
Yeah, so I think
You're also running into, somebody in chat says, is that really logical? Another thing I'm kind of hinting at too here, and I had this problem a lot through my 20s, is people view emotions as kind of like this weak, irrational thing, and then you've got like rationality, okay? And the rational part of your brain is stronger than the emotional part of your brain. But same thing is nature versus nurture. Eventually, hopefully you grow up and you learn more, and you realize that these two things play off of each other, and one can't exist without the other. There is no reason without some subjective emotional thing to interpret it. Your emotions are not random, even if you're being unreasonable. It doesn't mean that they're, they come from nowhere. And you can wind up in this weird trap where you are dismissing other people as being emotional. And what you should be asking is like, well, why are they exhibiting that emotion? Because remember, it's something I say a lot, even if people are being wacky, even if people are being completely incorrect or crazy, they're not random. You can be irrational, but not random, right? It's coming from somewhere.
I get it, but like, I don't want to be a part of your story. It's like,
right. So I think that's what's fueling the flames. You don't see it that way.
yeah, okay. I don't know how that.
Right. So
would.
when I live,
why would you care for so long?
we'll get to that in a second. But I think that this is another thing, which is that you're thinking a lot.
Hey, Destiny, former Sound Piker fan here. Is there a way to get in a Discord call with you to talk about some content fallout? If you want, maybe I'll, maybe later I'll do stream disagreements, I guess.
Okay, so we're going to talk about something called mentalization. Okay? So when you imagine what is going on in someone else's head, I don't think you are doing nothing you're saying is incorrect, but I think everything you're saying is pretty incomplete. Right? So you're saying like, okay, there's a parasocial aspect. You're completely right. Like you're right about everything you're saying. I just think the main mistake, if you can call it that, the cognitive process that is really getting you in trouble is incompleteness. So
I don't understand.
I know. I know. I'm like 99% confident that this is going to be very hard. And I think this is why you're in this situation, because this is like, it's like, you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know. I've tried everything. What they're saying is just not true. The reason that I know that these people are not valid is because they copy pasta each other. Right? Do you see how much?
No, I think that's not everyone, right? There are some people
sure.
that are just upset because they saw me as like some pure holier than thou content creator, which that's not realistic. I'm a human being.
And then there's more just like, you make, oh shit, cryogenic plants. You're right. My bad.
I think
hold
there
on.
are some people that are,
Whoa. No, I don't agree with that.
No, I definitely do, because there are some that have messaged me with stuff like that. There are definitely people that felt that.
Yeah, I know they felt that. But I don't think that you're an ordinary content creator. I don't think you're an ordinary human being. I think you're a superhuman being.
What?
Yeah. How do you think about yourself?
I don't know. I don't generally.
What?
I think therein lies another problem.
How do you not?
Right? So
Okay.
if you don't think about, I know it's weird, like I'm sending you a lot of weird stuff. Right? So I think that if you don't think about yourself on a regular basis, the version of yourself that you will have on your mind that then projects out to the outside world is not going to be an ordinary human being. I think you project exceptionalism.
I'm not sure I understand, but
I can understand that. So I think that this is going to be a situation where it's going to be very hard, and I'm going to do my best. So the first thing is I'm not right. But I think that there's something about the way that you construct narratives. There's something about the way that you are objective, but other people are subjective. How do you know that you're not the subjective one and they're not the objective ones?
I absolutely am.
You can wait. I don't know what he's about to say, but it's always a really good question, and it's always a really good test. In my opinion, there's a lot of good tests that you can perform where you ask a person a question, and based on their response, you can tell if they've ever considered a thing or not. My go-to examples of this are always like, how do you make sure that you're being objective when it comes to media consumption? And the number one thoughtless response always given is, I consume media from a variety of sources. It's like, okay, that doesn't say anything. That's one of the hollowest answers you can ever give. In my opinion, when somebody gives an answer to that, they've never put in real thought into being objective in their media consumption, because that's not a real answer. That's an answer you give that you think people want to hear, that you think means you're being objective. You never really thought about it, because you could consume media from a wide variety of sources and still be wholly misinformed on some given topic, you know? So that's a good question of like, how do you make sure, and this, I feel like every streamer, I feel like every public person, I feel like every person period should have thought about this, because we all have these times in our life, I would imagine everybody does, where you feel like you're correct and a bunch of other people feel like you're incorrect, and you have to have some way to evaluate, like, okay, am I fucked up here, or am I incorrect on something? Like, how do I gauge that? How can I tell if I'm being correct and the other people are wrong, or if I'm fucking up somehow and they're being correct, right? And it's a very difficult question to answer too, yeah. What would be a good response to that? Well, for me, I was just never wrong, so I don't have to worry about that. For other people, go to therapy. I think having a process where you actually write down and review situations, I think is really helpful. I think people undervalue sometimes, you can call them diaries or whatever, but I think people undervalue sometimes how helpful it is to actually write down your thoughts and look at them on paper. It's way more easy to criticize your own thought process, or to be critical of your own thought. It's the same thing. If you actually see it written down on paper, because or on a notepad or whatever, because sometimes we can think we're being reasonable, but we're making all these small little catches or caveats in our mind. But when you actually write it down and you look at it, you're like, okay, well, this is fucking retarded. Okay, so that can be helpful. There are a bunch of like mini tactics you can use to see if it's being helpful or not. If a friend had the same issue pop up, what would my advice to them be? If I were to start swapping names out here, would I be treating this the same? Right? I think this person wronged me because of this. Have I exhibited behavior like this where I would expect not to be called on? Right? There's a whole bunch of little things like this that you can do to change up variables and analyze the situation, to write it down so you can be critically analytical of it. Having a friend or family member that you trust, that has your best concern in mind, that knows you well and gives you good feedback, can be nice to review situations with them. Like, these are all ways that you can kind of approach that. Like, if I'm in a situation where a bunch of people are saying, I'm not perceiving something correctly, but I think I am, right? How do I do some kind of objectivity check there? It's very difficult, yeah.
Way that you construct narratives, there's something about the way that you are objective, but other people are subjective. How do you know that you're not the subjective one and they're not the objective ones?
I absolutely am subjective.
It's might be too personal, but do you have an example of a time you did this and found a flaw in your thinking? I'm flawless. Well, if not evidence by everything else, I think the most recent thing that I dramatically reconsidered were environments that I spend time in. So, to be fair, as I caveat, to excuse my ego, no, I did change up my content significantly over the past year and a half. Although even with the content change, I hadn't still evaluated the groups of people that I run in. One thing that I'd always kind of considered in the past was, if anything pops up, I'm not really that worried about it, because I feel like I'm always willing to write a manifesto or, go to the mat on something and argue something out. And it should be relatively fine. But one thing that I didn't consider, that I've reconsidered on, and this actually came from conversations with other people, actually, because they pointed some things out. I'm like, okay, that's true. One thing that I didn't consider was, when you start to stack up a whole bunch of variables against you in a given environment that are fully within your control. So that might mean being friends or being friendly with people that might not have your best interests at heart, or being friends with people who are still friends with people who might not have your best interests at heart. That you might think that you can navigate all of that in an adept manner, and maybe you can, but then if there's a certain situation that pops up where it's too much or you can't, what you've done is you've stacked the deck against you in such a disfavorable way that you're setting yourself up for a really bad time, depending on what's going on. But before, I would have just said, like, fuck it, whatever, we'll deal with situations as they come. Whereas now I'm a bit more proactive in that, like, should I be friends with this person? Do I need to be friends with this person if I know they're part of this group? Probably not. I should probably not talk to this person at all. I think that's a pretty significant change I've made over the past like year, I think, year and a half.
I don't think that that's the case at all. There's no way that everything that I say is objective. That would be ridiculous.
Can you be more concrete? That seems a bit confusing to follow. Does it?
I think that would be absurd.
And if we go back and listen to the conversation that we've had from now, would we be able to predict that's the way that you feel about yourself based on how you've been talking?
I don't know.
I think the answer is going to be no.
Wait.
Right? So when I and listen to the conversation that we've had from now, would we be able to predict that's the way that you feel about yourself based on how you've been talking?
Wait. Genuine question. Do you feel you do this too much or not enough when it comes to Hassan? Do you find your hatred for him clouds your judgment sometimes? I feel like I am one of the most fair people online when it comes to evaluating other people. But I can say that objectively for a few reasons. One, I'll watch their content. I will give it a shot. I don't take like, here's a Hassan hate compilation channel that we're going to watch. Like, I'll watch the full thing, number one. Which I feel is giving them a fair shot. And then number two, I feel like I'm like the only fucking large political content creator online who's willing to give props to somebody or defend somebody when I agree with something they're saying, even when they're completely politically poised against me. I feel like those are two decent objective checks on myself. So like when Hassan mentioned about like being a streamer is hard or whatever, like I know what he meant there, and I was willing to apply a bit of charitability to kind of understand what he was saying, and the whole internet was shitting on for that. It's like, I get it. When people said he did the shit skin comment and I listened to the full thing, I'm like, I don't think this is like an Indian joke, like the racist comment. I think he was just trying to make fun of the kid for having acne. So I feel like I do decently there. Not decently. I feel like I do better than anybody else there when it comes to that.
I don't know.
I think the answer is going to be no. Right? So when I ask you, why do they feel this way? How do you know that they're wrong? You say, well, objectively, you rely on proof. And if you're dealing with people who are mature enough, then they understand that. But if there are people that are younger than you, that means that they don't, these young kids nowadays.
Fuck. Okay, wait. How do you treat other people is also objective without just losing from a numbers perspective. If so many people disagree with you and you weigh them equally, all as people, won't you always be wrong, or shouldn't you always suspend judgment? So in my case as a content creator, this is very difficult because obviously if you're a content creator and you do politics, there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with you. So this is what I would say, and I've said it in the past. If you elicit a response from somebody, you just need to understand why, at the very least. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. So, like a lot of people might say I'm an asshole or I'm pro-genocide or whatever. I know that I'm not pro-genocide, but it's an error in thinking to say like, okay, a lot of people think I'm pro-genocide, but I know I'm not pro-genocide. They just think that because they're jelly haters and they're losers, right? It's like, well, hold on. What behavior do I exhibit that might contribute to that, right? I do say a lot of edgy things. I'm aware of that. A lot of it can be clipped and posted in other places. I am aware of that. And a disproportionate amount of the debates that I've had on Israel-Palestine are generally defending the Israeli perspective. I get that. And a lot of the people that I fight online also are pro-Palestinian people, right? So if somebody comes at me and they have that perspective, or there are a lot of people that have this perspective, even if I think that their perspective is incorrect, at least I can explain where it's coming from. I understand where it's coming from, because the understanding is important, because then I can decide, okay, well, what aspects of this do I want to change? Do I want to have more debates against Israel? Do I want to be, less hyperbolic in my language? Do I want to, right? And it could be at the end of the day, you just don't want to change anything, which is fine as well. It's just, the important part is just understanding where it comes from and not being totally clueless or just lying to yourself and saying like, well, I think everybody just believes this random thing because they're jelly haters and whatever, That you feel about yourself based on how you've been talking?
I don't know.
I think the answer is going to be no. Right? So when I ask you, why do they feel this way? How do you know that they're wrong? You say, well, objectively, you rely on proof. And if you're dealing with people who are mature enough, then they understand that. But if there are people that are younger than you, that means that they don't, these young kids nowadays are not proof oriented. There's parasocial. And the tricky thing about this is that you're not wrong. So I would agree with every single one of the statements that you made.
But you're missing
I think that
Defense mechanism for that. 100%.
A defense mechanism meaning what?
No, it's a defense mechanism on my end. And the reason why I did that is because it's
and he's still intellectualizing all of it. Yeah.
Gone on too long. And it's gotten to that point where it's hard for me to have a response that is not an emotional response. Like we talked about this before, is like whenever I feel like I'm having an emotional response, I just stop and I walk away for a moment, come back to it. But with this, I'm getting back into that old habit of like, I need to deflect this, I need to diffuse this. This is kind of a wall in front of this. I don't even want to, and you just kind of put it up there and walk away from the scenario. And that's literally what that is, which is, here's my evidence, take it or leave it. And the reason why it ends up being, here's my evidence, here's how I feel people are, this is the objective fact of this, is because we've had tens of thousands of people bringing that up, and it's just turned into like a callus, if that makes sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense. How are you feeling about this call, by the way? Like, is this okay?
This is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is fine.
So I think this is what you're. So here is what has contributed to the situation, which doesn't mean that you did something wrong. I don't think you're bad or anything like that. But I think that this tendency to walk away from your emotions and lean into logic, I don't think works very well. So I think, like, remember how we said that something that you're doing about the way that you respond to this is like triggering people harder. They're getting angrier and angrier and angrier. They're not letting up. Whereas like most content creators, people basically move on to trolling someone else. So anytime a content creator, like reaches out to me and they're like, hey, I'm really struggling, I'm like, best thing that you can do is wait till they move on, because the internet is an ugly mob, and this is the other thing that you're running into, which we haven't talked about. I do think that what you project is exceptional. And one of the things that the internet absolutely loves is to take an exceptional person and make them bad. So
I don't know here, or maybe I could be incorrect. When Dr. K is saying you project exceptionalism, I think what Dr. K is getting at is that the projection is intentional. That's by design, not on accident. And I don't know if Thor is perceiving that correctly, or if Thor is just thinking, oh, people just think I'm exceptional because of how cool I am. I could be wrong, though. Maybe Dr. K doesn't mean it that way. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll get to that.
we love tearing down people who are good, and we love redemption arcs as human beings, right? There's like, this person thought they were the best thing since sliced bread, and we're going to fucking tear them down. I've been on the receiving end of that a lot. And then the flip side of that, yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And to be clear, I don't think of that about myself, like at all. Like
And he thinks, it's interesting too, because he thinks that he doesn't, I don't know if he, it's so hard to know what he is lying to himself about, what he's lying to Dr. K about, or what he just fails to understand. I'm not sure. If somebody were to say, I'm smug and I project smugness, that's actually way better than somebody who says, I don't know how I project smugness. I don't even perceive myself as being like that, right? I say this a lot, okay? I personally, I'm pretty abrasive, not as much now that I'm older, but I'm pretty abrasive and I'm an asshole. And I totally understand if people don't like me because of that. I have a very abrasive personality, and I get that. And that's fair. If you don't, there are certain types of personalities that are just, fuck, this guy's too much, which is fair. I get it. I understand that. I think that, obviously, because I'm the one that is saying it that way, I think that's a fair way to assess your own abrasiveness. An unfair way to assess your own abrasiveness is some people just don't like me because I'm too honest. I'm too brutal. Everybody has that friend or has heard that person who's like, people just don't like me because I just tell it like it is, because I say the truth. And it's like, no, motherfucker. People don't like you because you're a snarky asshole, okay? If you don't even perceive why people perceive you in a certain way, that's very scary, and that's very bad, I think.
Constantly going over anything that I can do right, anything that I can do wrong. I remember all of my own mistakes and beat the shit out of myself for them whenever I do that, just like I feel like a lot of people do.
I believe you do that for the stuff that you are aware of.
Yes, for the, I mean,
you can't do it otherwise, right? Like how
things that I'm aware of, for sure.
100%. So I think
I don't think I'm better than other people. I do think that it's funny because you can that. There's a lot of people that brought that up, and it's like I never said that I was, but you'll see there's a number of people that are in there that are getting like banned for this shit right now. It's like they come in and they're like, "Did you know that he worked at Blizzard for 7 years?" Like, yeah, that was my career, and I'm proud of that.
This seems super different, though. He isn't saying that he doesn't think he gives off an exceptional character, but he literally doesn't think he's exceptional. He knows he's exceptional. That's why he just brought up the Blizzard thing. Like, he said exceptional things about himself, and he should know why people perceive him that way. That's very scary or dangerous if you don't understand at all how people perceive you, especially as an online content creator. But really, as anybody, you should know how people perceive you.
That are in there that are getting like banned for this shit right now. It's like they come in and they're like, "Did you know that he worked at Blizzard for 7 years?" Like, yeah, that was my career, and I'm proud of that. So of course I'm going to talk about that because it gives context to talk about other things around the games industry.
Like, gives context. It doesn't give context. It does, but specifically the context that it really gives is authority. That's what you're conveying when you say that. I am an authority, subject matter expert on this or whatever, right? Like, I don't say that, oh, I went to music school just to let you know that I went to music school. Like I say, because when I say I went to music school, it's to explain I have a somewhat formal background on this, right? This is some kind of authority appeal, which isn't always fallacious, by the way. You can appeal to authority are not always bad. That's fine. Yeah.
Which is what we do on the stream.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the things that I talk about in regards to those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality I'm just trying to give context.
So that is
like this would be a triggering statement. I would get triggered hearing somebody saying this, and I think most people would. Like, I'm not bragging, bro. I'm just trying to explain how much godlike experience I have in the industry, Because you can also kind of test or probe at a person's you have to be careful when you do this because you can go down bad roads, but you can try to figure out like if they're being earnest too by looking at what they're saying and looking at what they could have said otherwise, right? You said you worked for 7 years at Blizzard, one of the most respected gaming companies there was in the world. Why not just say like, oh, I have experience working in the games industry, or I used to be a developer for a major studio? Why not just say that? There's a reason why you give a time frame and a name. It's because you want to appeal to the prestige of working at that place. And the fact that you're not honest about that is troublesome.
To those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality I'm just trying to give context.
So that is the problem right there. So I want you to listen to this phrase.
Sure.
This gets misconstrued as arrogance, but in reality it's this. Yeah. That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro. Like, tell me I'm wrong.
Okay. I don't see it that way, but all right.
Right? So, oh yeah.
Obviously you don't see it that way.
You don't see it that way. You're wrong.
No.
Right? I'm right. So you're subjectively, you're thinking you have blind spots. You're wrong. like I'm objective and you're subjective.
No,
This is not the way it's perceived. This is really the way it is.
I think that turns into, I guess, conversational PvP for the sake of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It absolutely turns into conversation. That's what you're doing.
When I say I'm doing this for context,
Yes, when you're saying other people get it wrong, and here's the reality of it. Like, go back and like we can like rewind the stream and just listen to the structure of
that
your
is me
sentence.
being that is me being adversarial against people that are trying to make it out like that is an arrogance thing, that it is a boasting thing, like I'm trying to push somebody else down. That is absolutely me being adversarial against that kind of speech. 100%.
I'm not. I don't think it's so. So I think there's a construction in your speech, and there's a theme. If we listen, I know it's kind of hard, but you do things that are objective, right?
Yes.
And subjective. I'm a human being.
Which ones do you represent? Which ones do we hear when we hear you talk?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay. So, for example, if we were to code statements as subjective or objective, okay?
Okay.
Like, so coding a subjective statement is, let's say, like, I'll just give you an example. You know, why are people getting mad at you? Or you said something about, you know, I rely on proof. So if I were to code that,
It doesn't mean you don't.
I know.
Well,
I feel like somebody could take it that way, but that's not.
No.
what I
That's
said.
I'm not going there. So if we were to code that, that gets coded as objectively, right? That's an objective statement.
Okay. Sure.
So here's a subjective statement. I feel like this is unfair.
Okay.
Have you said that at any point
Yes.
over this
Maybe not today.
conversation?
I feel like I have said that because I was talking about the response is not proportional.
There we go.
Which
That's
means-
hold on. No. That's beautiful. That is the response is not proportional. That is not a statement of subjectivity. That is a statement of fact.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you understand how I'm coding it?
I guess I could see that. I mean, like, that's me making an objective statement when I guess somebody else could say, no, it is proportional, you deserve this, sort of a thing. I guess the thing is I just don't agree with that stance, so I state it in the way that I do, right? With that. And
I don't agree with it, so I state it as objective fact. The fact, damn, I think maybe he really does lack the self-awareness, because I think if you were, or maybe by definition, narcissists are self-aware. Because I was gonna say, if you were self-aware enough, I think you would phrase this more, I don't want to say maliciously, but there's better ways that you could cover for yourself here, unless he truly just doesn't perceive it. But that's crazy that he just said that.
I guess the thing is I just don't agree with that stance, so I state it in the way that I do, right? With that. And I don't know if that's wrong, though, because I feel like there's a limit that seems sane. And by sane, I mean correct and like not.
Absolutely, man. There's absolutely a limit that seems sane.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be different for everybody.
No.
Whatever their version is.
No, it's not. Because you didn't say there's a limit. It's because you use the word sane. Sane is like an objective thing, right? Sane is like crazy, insane versus sane. That's not a subjective thing. That is an objective kind of assessment.
Yep.
Right? So like if we say that someone is insane, we're not saying that they're subjectively insane. We're saying that they are objective. Like those words are about an objective dimension.
But I'm not sure I understand the direction of this. And I think the reason why is because when I'm talking about these things of an objective stance, if this is too far, is because the statements that people are making are really fucked up. Like, I do
not
think
what
that it is
he's-
correct to make an objective statement to be like, you shouldn't be sending me pictures of my house from Google Maps. Right? Like, it's this, like,
I agree.
I don't think that's wrong.
So great. So let's take a step back for a second. Are you sure this is okay?
Yeah. No, I guess I just don't understand the direction of subjectivity versus objectivity.
I'm with you. So I'm slow playing it. So let me be explicit. So remember, this goes back to what you are dealing with is disproportionate, right? So there's a variable that's missing. Something about the way, and now I'm making an objective statement, okay? It's not about blame. This is about assessing the way that you are existing on the internet and the response that happens to you. There's something in here objectively that is disproportionate.
Yes.
Okay? And this is completely, and even if we say, oh, here's the reason and you're to blame for it, I don't think that there's any reason that we can come up with that justifies other people's behavior. Does that make sense?
On some of these cases, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I think there is a limit.
Now what I'm trying to get into is precisely this, which is and this sounds arrogant, but I'm going to say, so it's clear to me that you have blind spots about this, because something about the way that you are navigating, you have a rubric for how you interact with people. And something about that rubric is fucking triggering people. So what we're trying to do, so how did you feel when I said that?
I thought it was funny because, like, I guess for me, it's a kind of a dumbing down of the scenario, right? Of like, yeah, it's triggering people, but it's so much more than that. But yeah.
Okay.
Even what he's saying here, he can't handle the response. So like, it's not that just that I'm triggering people, it's that people are being unfair to me, right? It's still
leading them to do things that I don't even understand the reasoning behind it on a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
Right. So I think the end game that I have here is to hypothesize what could be responsible for that.
There's no way he's just a narcissist here. There's no world where you don't understand or pretend to not know why some people would dislike the way you phrase things at all. So I should assume everyone sees it in the same way. I feel like it comes from a disconnect from how you view things compared to how the average person does that more than just ego, which is more autistic than narcissistic. I think that, I don't know what the DSM says about this or whatever, but like, I don't think that narcissists generally perceive their narcissism. I don't think they do. I feel like sometimes they'll just say or do things where it's like, bro, do you really lack that much perspective on yourself? Are you serious right now? I feel like a really good example of this was when Mr. Girl was trying to get me, and he posted it was like a 2.5 minute conversation that he had with Anna, and he was like, Destiny's trying to say that we manipulated Anna, but look, I'm posting the whole conversation to show clearly that we didn't. And it was the most manipulative conversation that I've ever heard in my entire life. They were like, I think Lav and Mr. Girl were screaming at her, just like, you have to send everything right now you've ever said to Steven. You got to send it all. He's about to destroy our whole lives, and it's going to be your fault. You got to send. It's like, oh, bro, this is like the most manipulative shit I've ever heard in my life. But he didn't even perceive it that way. He's like, well, I'm not being manipulative. I can't be manipulative because I'm never wrong. All right. I genuinely do think that people who are super narcissistic they don't actually perceive it. They don't.
That gap. So in my experience, when something like this happens to someone like you, I think you're a decent dude. I think it sounds like you made a smug comment and you ran away from the raid. It's a fucking hardcore raid. So I don't know what people were expecting. You know, like when you play WoW hardcore and you raid, sometimes things go bad and people die. Like that's just what happens in a WoW hardcore raid. Like what were people expecting? But I think what you're tapping into some energy that I think you're blind to. You don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. And my point is that the reason it doesn't make sense to you is because of the way that you are looking at the world. Which is that if you pay attention to your statements are coded very objectively. And so then what happens is once you start looking at the world in terms of proof or not proof, I don't know if you're right, I don't know if you're wrong, but the question then becomes, how do two people that think that they are both operating based on reality.
Can you play that Mr. Girl clip? I'm super interested. It was on his Twitter. I don't know if it's up anymore, though.
Who disagree, how do we patch that up? How do we bridge that gap?
I mean, generally what I see with that kind of stuff is the way that I like to do is you kind of present evidence and stuff, you talk about it, you find out if you were right or if they were right. And sometimes you're both wrong, right? Like it just comes out to that. You learn something, you move on. Sometimes when it's like, I find it to be disingenuous, right? And I will use that as an objective term. I find it to be disingenuous to have a person come in that is not interested in a resolution, that just wants to cause a hateful situation.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's most of what I'm getting with this. And when they can't get me, it makes them angrier. When they can't hurt me, it makes them angrier. When they can't do anything about it, they can't shut down the stream, it makes them angrier. We get tons of people that'll come in and say things like, people still watch this guy. It's like, yeah, we still have a massive community. People, hanging out here and doing stuff. So like, I feel like when I make those objective statements, it's because I go, this is how I have this situation for communication. And if your only reason to be here is to cause problems, it's not going to be compatible. But if you want, and I tell people all the time, it's like, if you want to talk about this, we can talk about it. But if you're just here to copy paste something off of Reddit, cause a scene, and then get banned, like, we just don't care. It's going to ban you.
Okay. So I think what makes this,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think what makes this really challenging is not that you're wrong. I think what makes this hard is that you're right. Okay. So when you're wrong, it is easy to show a correction. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you're right, but incomplete, it becomes harder to show a correction.
Yeah.
So like, let's say that I'm trying to think of an analogy.
Because you're focusing on it's a magnitude thing, right? There's two problems, one huge one small one, and you're accurately identifying the small one and apologizing for it, but you're missing the big one. But you're not wrong with what you're saying. You're just missing the whole picture, yeah.
Like, if I develop a product that is crappy, that is successful, that happens to be successful, it is way harder to understand how that crappy product
could be better.
Is crappy.
Or
does that make sense? And I'm not trying to analogize you to a crappy product. I'm really just using this as an example of I mean, I love your content. Like, I really do. I think you're a great guy. Like, I don't think you deserve this. I'm in your corner, okay? But you see what I mean? I'm just using that as an example of, like, if you make a crappy video game, right, and then, like, people play it, that doesn't make the video game good. And trying to explain to someone, hey, I know y'all think that Oblivion is an amazing game. I'd give it a 10 out of 10, but Oblivion is the start of the decline of the Elder Scrolls series. Oblivion is the first step in the wrong direction to what ended up as Starfield. That is something for a lot of people to have difficulty understanding, right? Because Oblivion was a great game. It's a 10 out of 10. But if you want to really understand the glory that was Elder Scrolls, you have to play Morrowind. And
chat is very divided on this topic.
The chat is wrong. Like, they're wrong. It's okay. Sometimes I get to be right and they get to be wrong.
It's a very objective statement.
Absolutely, right? So, and how do people respond to that?
I mean, it depends on the context, right? I think that there are moments where you can make statements like that. It's funny.
So I think what makes this hard in your situation is that everything that you say is correct. I just think it's incomplete. So what I'm basically getting a sense of is that you tend to, since you move away from some of this, like, emotional energy and you lean in. So the first thing that happens is once you suppress your, like, emotional circuitry, your emotions still influence your logic.
Okay.
Okay.
I can see that. I think in times of deep stress, that gets more so.
100%. It gets very, very, very good, right? So it's not that the emotions stop. It's just that we start dissociating from them. Dissociation doesn't mean shut down. It means unaware. And then what happens is the emotions will shape our logic. And it's not that they're illogical. It's that it becomes more selective.
Sure, I can see that. That makes sense.
And so I think what's going on is like the story that you tell me has what I would call missing reasons. So I know that's confusing. There's a great post about it that I think a therapist made many years ago. But sometimes when people tell stories and like bad things are happening to them, they are leaving out things that evoke the response of the other people. So when you tell a story that other people are just like crazy and it's the internet and it's parasocial and people are reacting, there's something missing there. I don't think you can evoke. I mean, it's very possible that you were just incredibly, incredibly unlucky. I don't think that that is a good attitude to
I don't think
take.
it's good to script you. No, I think
right?
that
So
removes any chance of fixing that. Yeah.
I suspect that there is something around your smugness. I suspect there is something around the way that you perceive yourself as ordinary, but you act anything but. Maybe even some degree of, because I don't think you're ordinary. Like, I don't think that's objectively correct. Like, I think you're exceptional. Like, if we look at human beings, I think you're exceptional. Like, if we look at the range of various things, you are not ordinary. If we look at the bell curve of content creators on Twitch, you are not ordinary. So
I would say in terms of that maybe, but like I just feel like a normal dude.
Yeah.
I feel like a normal
I hate it when people say this.
dude that sits in a chair for 12 hours a day.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Go back 34 seconds. Wait, why? What did I miss?
The way that you perceive yourself as ordinary, but you act anything but. Maybe even some degree of, because I don't think you're ordinary. Like, I don't think that's objectively correct. Like, I think you're exceptional. Like, if we look at human beings, I think you're exceptional. Like, if we look at the range of various things, you are not ordinary. If we look at the bell curve of content creators on Twitch, you are not ordinary. So
I would say in terms of that maybe, but like I just feel like a normal dude.
Yeah.
I feel like a normal dude that sits in a chair for 12 hours a day.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there are parts of you that are, and it sounds like you sometimes push these away. I think there's a lot more there. So you said, you know, I feel like a normal dude. I think that makes sense. But I think there's a lot of feelings there about being a normal dude that maybe are not super conscious.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand, but I think that's kind of the point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the challenge that I have is that I'm making statements that are unfalsifiable. Right. So if I say subconsciously, you don't think you're a normal dude, how can you ever disprove that? So this is one of the frustrations with my profession, is that sometimes people like myself will make these statements, right? So I do this carefully, where like, I'm not saying this is correct. I think it's worthwhile for you to explore how you construct a narrative, what people, and this is where I think what happens is when
I just came off of a political stream, and the crux of the viewer's argument was Israel equals colony, therefore Jewish Israel should be remigrated. Would you fight the colony? Sure, if they're a colony, where are they a colony from? From where? Where did they go back to?
people react to you, you look at the objectivity. I think that's a mistake, because nothing you perceive will be objective. The human brain is not capable of objective perception, by definition.
I do think there is an objective reality, and I do think that's something that there is value in striving for in many situations, because something I don't like is perception is reality. And I know that perception is reality for the grand majority of situations. It has nothing to do with the objective reality of what is truth of the situation, what actually has occurred or anything like that. It's how do I feel about what occurred? Well, and that's something I've always felt, and that's kind of like a big thing for me. Yeah.
Great. I love it. I agree with you 100%. And I would love to talk about that with you maybe today, or maybe on a different day, just about the philosophy side of it. But I think that my point is, so you're right. So like there's an objective reality, agree. And perception is not objective reality. So when you look at objective reality and you conclude that this is what really happened, where are we? Is that objective reality or is that your perception?
That is my perception.
Very
100%.
good. Right.
When I talk about it, I think that the disconnect is this. When I talk about something and I say it with, this is what happened, that's from my perspective. Right. And I think maybe I'm not doing enough in terms of explaining this is from my perspective, this is how I feel about it, because I don't talk that way generally.
Yeah. That's not what you should be doing. So I think this is a key point. This is exactly it. So I think this solution space seems hard for you to grasp.
Wait, what
you shouldn't be further explaining yourself. You should be further trying to understand why people feel this way about you.
Whatever.
Right? So this is not about what is objective. It is about what someone else's subjective perception of you is.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
And that will give you insight into how you are perceived, which in turn will give you an insight, an ability to bypass your own cognitive biases of your own perception. So if I want to understand what I really am, I have a certain amount of information from myself, right? This is what I think I am. But then I have another very valuable piece of information, which is other people's perceptions of me. Now, this is where things get really hard, because if people are sending you death threats, it becomes very difficult to get a reasonable perception of who you are from a heavily biased individual.
True.
Right?
Yes. It's impossible at that point. I think.
I
Not
get that.
impossible. It's challenging.
So not impossible, right? So this is where it's really interesting. But sometimes the people who hate you the most can still be very valuable information.
Yeah, you just got to be so careful with that, though, because there's something they hate. It's just on you to figure out what it is or why you're eliciting that response, right?
About how you exist in the world.
I agree with that. No, I
Right?
super agree with that.
And the classic example of this is like in a relationship where there is one person who is narcissistic. So anytime we're dealing with narcissism, it becomes really hard for that person, like this person will perceive other people as hating them. I think I'm not saying you're narcissistic or anything like that. And I think that there's a difference between a narcissistic family member who believes that I lost weight to make them look bad. There's a huge objective gap.
What?
Yeah, so I lost weight. So I feel insecure about, person A feels insecure about their weight. Person B loses weight. Person A gets mad at person B for losing weight so that it makes them look bad. That shit happens. I think
That's weird as shit.
It's a wide gap between death threats that you're receiving, which I really do hope stop.
Yeah.
But my point is that I think the mistake you're making is that you say, I'm smug, and then you go into all of these other issues, whereas I think you're really downplaying, whether consciously or unconsciously or whatever. Maybe it's even objectively correct. I don't know. All I know is that when you do that, people are not going to be happy with it. And when they respond to you, we're not talking about right or wrong here. We're talking about efficacy or not efficacy. Trying to understand where they're coming from with their complaints, as opposed to, so basically steel manning their argument instead of straw manning their argument.
Okay. No, I mean,
Right?
I think the thing is that that's what I tried to do in the beginning, and I have not done that since. I think I stopped doing that about 30 days in. I tried to sit down and talk to people about it. I tried to ask people like, hey, why are you saying that? And each time that I tried to do that, like I said, the callus kind of built up. It would end in just screaming the same thing over again.
Taking like one clip from a debate and trying to say that like, oh, this is indicative of his entire position. This is such a stupid way to frame things. When you make so many unhinged fucking comments like Hassan does, and you try to find a way to explain all of them.
The Arabs created a million Zionists because they're anti-Semitic. 900,000 Jews, approximately, 700 to 900,000, were forced to become Zionists, not by choice, but because they were forced out.
Who
The
forced
vast
them?
majority went to the fucking Arabs. The Arabs, the
There
anti-Semitic
you go.
Arabs.
There you go.
What?
No,
You
you're too
can-
fucking delusional to realize what kind of racist nonsense.
Like, he's not even really saying, oh, fuck, because I didn't actually even hear this. He's not even saying, like, fucking Arabs. It's a response to, like, who even did this? And he's like, the fucking Arabs! The people he was just talking about. It wasn't like those fucking Arabs. They're not even really showing the correct implication for this. But, like, oh my God, it's so cringe. If Hassan kept saying fucking Jews, how many times did he say that? Like, if somebody were to say, Arabs were really mad because by 1940, basically all of them had been destroyed by the British occupiers in mandatory Palestine, and then the fucking Jews, kept coming in and displacing Arabs, and they were getting really upset that they weren't going to have a fucking country anymore. And then somebody was like, "What do you mean? Wait, who is displacing them?" They're like, "The fucking Jews. We're displacing all the Arabs." That's not like fucking Jews. That's not. I don't even know how to explain this like linguistically, but that's not the same type of thing there, right? Like. But okay, we can pretend it is. So cringe.
Until they get banned. And I haven't been able to get like a valid, real conversation out of it. I think the biggest thing is that I've only been able to receive really polarized responses. I either get people from our community, they're like, no, you're the best. You didn't do anything wrong, which is not true. Like, obviously, I screwed up in the dungeon, right? Like, that's obvious. And I was smug about it.
Screwed up in the dungeon.
Right? And then there's the other side of it, which is you're a piece of shit and you deserve to die. And I'm like, dude, these are so polarized. What am I supposed to get?
Yeah,
from
so the solution that I am suggesting works with humans. I don't know if it works on the internet.
That's a very different thing, right?
No, absolutely, right? So
Yeah, it is.
in the
Yeah.
real world, when someone gets mad at you, like, I want y'all to think about if people behaved in the real world the way they do on the internet, shit would be crazy.
That's actually already started happening. So, like, this has spilled over into people interacting with me that way in real life.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, and I mean, that's like, even...
Like expletive emphasis versus actual vitriol. It's not that. It's like saying, like, he's not saying, like, fucking Arabs, as in, like, the fucking Arabs. He's saying, like, no shit, the Arabs, or hello, the Arabs, or, like, the fucking Arabs. Like, that's the use of the word there. Not like those fucking Arabs did it, Jesus.
So, like, this has spilled over into people interacting with me that way in real life.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, and I mean, that's like, even if someone does something, I don't know what Thor did to hurt y'all, but I don't think he did very much objectively. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Like, so that's where, like, even when I say that, the way that I attach a statement to it, maybe I'm missing something, right? But my understanding of the situation is that you were kind of an ass about something involving a WoW raid, and then my guess is that you were kind of an ass with the way that you responded to it. because you're really good at being an ass, like in a way that I really appreciate. But you're an ass. So it's
when I
what
say
makes
smug, that's the same. Yes.
yeah. So like what I love, I've sent you a couple of DMs because like I'll see your shorts or whatever, and I'll be like, this is fucking amazing. That assholery that you exhibit, where you have these kind of base takes, is like what makes you amazing. And when that kind of emotional energy comes out where you did something wrong, and then I think what happens is the way that you frame your response is, it's not that bad. I didn't really do too much. Everyone made mistakes.
This is how, this is one thing I say a lot when people are like, oh, do you, like, if somebody says like, does an average person like your content, or how do people feel about your content? One of the things I always say is that like, if you agree with what I'm saying, my content is like based and awesome and king shit and it's the best thing ever. But like, if I'm saying something you disagree with, whoo, all of that self-righteousness and the epicness becomes like the most arrogant, stupid, dipshit, smug fucking thing in the history of the universe.
Like, it's like you'll say you make a mistake, but that's not what comes across, right? So if you and I have a fight, right?
So I feel like I'm being direct, and other people feel like I'm being evasive.
100%.
Okay.
So I want you to think about this for a second.
I've always had problems with that.
I can tell.
Communication failure in me.
I can tell 100%.
See, that's the thing. I couldn't have this conversation with anyone else because it was just polarized and obnoxious every time I tried to have that conversation. And yeah, no, I get that.
So,
I've had issues with that my entire life because it's hard for me to be like, if I say something, I go, hey, here's the thing, and they go, oh, he's hiding something, and I'm like, but how else can I say this?
Yes.
And that's, yeah.
So I think that's huge. So now I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you believe you are being direct and other people believe you are being evasive,
Yeah.
what kind of model would you develop for like shit happens on day 1 and what are things going to look like on day 100? It's just going to get worse, right? Because the more that you're pouring a liquid on the fire, you think it's water, they think it's oil.
Wait, quick Bill Burr break?
And things are just
that's why I tried. That's why I tried all those different like things along the way of like, hey, we'll talk about this, we'll do this kind of a thing. Try to communicate this in some other way, and I feel like I ran out of options. Jesus.
Yeah. So I really do, and maybe it's like me giving you the benefit of the doubt, and this will trigger people as well. I think you've done the best that you know how to do. I think you've done a really good job in managing this really shitty situation.
I feel like it, but I don't know if that's true, right? Like I don't know.
So I think what's true is, I think most human beings do the best that they know how to do. And oftentimes we don't judge.
I'm not sure if Thor is perceiving accurately what Dr. K is saying there. He's saying that you have a deficiency in terms of being able to problem solve here. That's what he's saying.
People based on what they're capable of. We judge people based on what they do. True. So like when someone is hurtful to me, like I'll give you, I know it's kind of a weird abstract sentence. So when I'm in the emergency room, someone is high on crystal meth and calling me an ass fucker or whatever.
Jesus.
Sorry, maybe that's too much.
That's fine.
I've heard it.
That's medicine.
Okay.
Right?
So when they say things like that, like the objective impact of those words is like, that's what they're doing, right? That's hurtful. And at the same time, the most peaceful and harmonious way to go through life is to do our best to like understand where this person is coming from, right? This person is crashing off of crystal meth. Their dopamine transmission was 10,000 times normal 2 hours ago, and now they're completely dopamine depleted. The more that we can do that, objectively, what they did was unacceptable. And also, like, if we treat people that way, like, it doesn't work well. It just doesn't work well. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's just. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's like, it's not harmonious. And I think what's been going on with you is first of all, people are not doing that for you. They're doing the opposite, right? People are not saying, hey, this guy is like, so for all the accusations, so like, I remember seeing something on LSF about people accused you of cheating in Outer Wilds or something. Like, this was one of the things. I don't know if that's true or not true. People seem to think that they have very convincing evidence of that. I don't really get into it. I still need to play the game. Please, no spoilers. My point is that in those moments, even if they're objectively correct,
careful.
I think the right thing that we need to do as humanity and the internet is cut people as much slack as we can. And this is where a lot of people will say, oh, we cut them slack. No, you guys don't cut them slack. Like, we don't. Let's be honest. On the internet, when you feel judgmental towards someone, the most knee-jerk reaction is to not cut them any slack, but to dogpile them. That's what happens. There's this very primitive human psychology thing of like, when one bully is beating someone else up, we're going to get our kicks in, especially if it helps us feel good. Now, the problem, Thor, is that I think you are guilty of exactly the same thing. We all are. It's a human deficit.
Uh-oh.
Sure.
Okay? But you're guilty of it too, because I think what you say, hey, I was just smug, that's not how it felt to other people.
I think that was me dumbing it down to a flashpoint moment, not the full story.
Absolutely. So, and that's where you're screwing up, because you will dumb down your flaws to one word, but you will extrapolate and hypothesize other people's flaws to the nth degree.
I don't think that is a fair assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't feel that that's a fair assessment, because I don't feel like I do that to people. When I'm talking about, hey, these are all the things that came after this, that's because that has gone on, like the moment was like a day. The attacks for that have been 100 days.
Okay.
So there's so much more content to talk about in terms of how much negativity there has been.
I rescind my statement.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So I accept that there is, okay, so here's how I would modify it.
Okay.
So I think you're right. I take that back and I
not trying to
apologize.
fight it,
No, and I think the perception from my end is still the same.
Okay.
Right? So we heard a long story from you. Even if it's congruent with reality, one word of what you did wrong, smug, and then 99 words of what other people did wrong. Even if it's correct, I'll agree that it's correct. My point is that when a human being shows up and says, I did one tiny thing wrong and everyone else did 99 things wrong, the reception that they're going to receive is not going to be pleasant.
The thing is I don't know if that's always the case.
It's not always the case.
Because what I found more often than not is I'm trying to give context of like, here's all the stuff that happened from my perspective. This is the response the person has from it. They at this point, it's because it's so exhausting. It's like, take it or leave it. It's like, here we go. Have the thing.
You're right. You're 100% right that it is. So I think the big difference is who the person is.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you were a human being who was physically assaulted on the street, you could say, here's the one thing I did wrong. Here are the 99 things they did wrong, and everyone would be on your side. You, however, have some combination of luck or the way that you interact with people, which you kind of said like you struggled with this. So I see that this is like, it's like a difficulty with mentalizing is what we call it.
I don't know what mentalizing means.
Mentalizing is the ability to understand other people's thought processes and internal experience. Now, I know this seems confusing to you because you are really good at cognitive calculation of those things. But there's a big difference between understanding their internal experience and calculating their internal experience.
Okay.
You're really good at calculating, which is I think what you've managed to do. You use that, and you're not alone, by the way. A lot of people have this. I have this, where we calculate our way to understanding other human beings instead of like understanding their subjective experience. It's cognitive empathy versus emotional empathy.
I think you have to do both sides of that.
You do, 100%.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And like, no, because I think for other scenarios, I feel like I have done that.
Yep.
Of like, hey, I can understand, hey, this person is doing something illogical, but they're doing it because from their perspective, it makes the most sense. Like you explain the person who's like high on meth, right? And they're having a freak out and they're screaming stuff at you. What they're doing doesn't make sense for everyone else around, but from their perspective, maybe they feel like they're getting attacked. Maybe they feel like all this kind of stuff is going on, right? So I understand that side of that completely. But with this scenario, like I said, it was exhausting at this point. That's fallen away. The layers of I guess, giving a shit about empathizing with attack people that are coming in is just gone.
I completely agree. And so what I'm sort of, this is more of like a long-term thing where like, and I think this is also where like, if any of y'all are in this situation, right? This idea of like, I keep on doing what I think is the right thing and it keeps on messing things up.
Yeah.
And I think you had a brilliant way to well, for me, it clicked. I think I'm being direct. Other people think I'm being evasive. So yes. I think for people, if y'all find yourself in a situation where you're like, I'm doing everything right. And by the way, this is like in the line of a narcissistic defense. Right. So a narcissistic defense is one where you think you're objectively correct and people around you are like wrong. So that is like,
I don't think I'm objectively correct. I'm just giving my
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying this is in line with a narcissistic defense. So I'm talking about the general principle, not about you. So, and this is just what happens. So this is what all human beings do. When we feel attacked, we tend to, the narrative that we portray is shaped in a certain way that like we don't really control. Like, so if I'm talking to a narcissist, I think, so let me just take a step back because
I feel like, I think I'm going to be critical of Dr. K here. I think Dr. K is making a mistake by wheeling out the N word here. I don't think he should have said that because now the feeling is very much like, hold on, wait a second. I'm doing things that are in line with narcissism. I think that puts the person in a very defensive posture, I would say, yeah.
I got to do a better job of this. So the first thing is that the narcissistic defense mechanism is something that all human beings employ. In yoga, it is called the ahamkara or the ego. So like we all, in order to function in life, it is very difficult for us to look at ourselves objectively. Now, what makes it harder to look at ourselves objectively is how much people attack us. So the more people attack us, the more our emotional and mental reaction is to defend. In the same way that if I was standing next to you and I tried to punch you, if I made a fist and I tried to punch you in your abs, your belly would harden. You can't even control it. You would have no choice but to harden your abdominal muscles as I tried to punch you in the stomach. In the same way,
have some, but yes.
In the same way, when we are attacked by someone, and this is true of all streamers because we get attacked a lot, our narcissistic defense must compensate. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I'm not calling you a raging narcissist. Please, no one take that away. Okay?
Oh, they will.
I know they will, and that's why I'm going to call attention to it. But this is something that if they're calling attention to it, they're missing the point. If anyone is listening to this conversation and still thinking this is about how Thor is a bad guy, y'all are fucking missing the point of this conversation. What you are going through, Thor, is something that every human being on the planet will go through in some form. Every human being on the planet will do something where they make a mistake, and a lot of other people, and y'all, like, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, chat. Have you ever been in a situation where a lot of people made mistakes, including you, and then you owned up to your part, but people dogpiled on you anyway? And when they dogpile on you anyway, you did something stupid.
Not us. We never make mistakes here, chat.
You behaved like Thor did, and you defended yourself. And you said, hey, objectively, here's what I think happened, here's my perspective. And the more you tried to defend yourself, the more angry people got with you. I would be stunned if this has not happened to every person in chat at some point in their lives. And so what we're talking about now is this cycle. This idea that, okay, I'm objective, other people are subjective. Because I absolutely think you have that bias, by the way. We all do. But like, I think it's very prevalent in the way that you talk. The really tricky thing there, and I have to acknowledge this, is it's not clear whether that is actually what's in your head or that is just the way it comes across. Because it absolutely comes across that way. So when I said you owned up to this one thing, and then you talked about all this other bad stuff that happened to you, and you're like, objectively, I disagree. I did this one thing, and I literally have 50,000 people. And I was like, okay, you know what? You're right. But even though you're right, what people are going to hear, their limbic circuits of the brain, are going to hear, yeah, I was smug and all this shit happened to me and it's not my fault. That's what people are going to hear. And when people hear that...
Dude, that's weird for me. Legitimately.
Yep, I know.
It's like, from my perspective, I'm like, hey, you know, I screwed this up. This is how this went down. Here's my perspective on it.
Yep.
And then the response is, you didn't take any accountability. You're a piece of shit. Why won't you just say it? And I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense to me in response.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
for me, that's such a disconnect between those two conversations.
And this is not about right or wrong, fair or unfair, just or unjust, true or not true. Now what we're talking about, like, so we're a channel that talks about the mind. So you're saying, I said this, someone says you don't take any fucking accountability. And you're like, that is a disconnect with me. I completely agree. That is the one thing that I think we can all agree on, is that whether they like you, dislike you, whether they like whatever, the one thing we can all agree on is that there's a disconnect. Other people think that you're disconnected. You think it's not even about you, but or other blame. There's absolutely a disconnect between the kind of response that you're getting and what you're doing. There is a disconnect for other people between what you did and what you're owning up to. That's my point. So like when I started this conversation, the key thing is that there's a circle that's empty. That's the only way this can be explained. And the question is, what's in the circle? And what I found, if y'all find yourself in a situation like Thor, I find the hardest thing is oftentimes the best thing to try to do, which is to try to understand when someone says, I don't take accountability, or they accuse me, they say, you don't take accountability, to do your best to try to understand that. And I think you've done that, because it sounded like for the first 30 days, you engaged with people in conversation.
Yes.
And when you engage,
and I found that the reactions started to get more and more. I could use the word unhinged, but it really just comes down to more and more unbending of, I just want to make an attack. I just want to go in the chat and make an attack. I just want to go on your YouTube and make an attack. It wasn't in good faith to have, like, I want to have a conversation about this. It was, I just want to be here to throw a punch and then leave. And
so I think that there's two things that I hear there. One is, once again, this pattern of the more I do something right, the more wrong someone appears to be. Right? So I tried to listen to them. They became more unhinged. They became more unbending. So that can absolutely be the case. But do you see how this is another scenario where you behaved correctly and someone else behaved incorrectly?
I feel like that is an incorrect response, because the first thing that'll be brought up is they always say, well, you didn't accept any blame. I go, here's in this post.
No. What did you hear me say?
Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah. So I'm just pointing. Your statement was, I tried to listen to people and they became more unhinged.
Yeah.
So I want you to
I think
code
the people that are still.
No, don't worry about the people. Hold on.
Okay.
Code that sentence. Look at the grammar of that sentence.
Because it's objective.
I did something right and they did something wrong. That's the way. That's what I hear when you say those words. And this could be where your disconnect is. I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way. I'm just saying, here's another statement that you made. I tried to talk to people. They're crazy.
I don't think. I think there's an objective reality there, though. When someone comes in and says, you didn't take any accountability for this, and I go, here in this post, I said I did this wrong. Here on this video, I said I did this wrong. And they go, that never happened. Like,
okay.
What am I supposed to do with that?
Very good. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay. So I know it's crazy. I know it's crazy. Okay. So bear with me, Thor. Try. Don't read chat. Focus. Ignore chat. Okay. So
he's typing in chat.
Here's the problem. You're not wrong. That's what's so wrong. That's what's so hard about this. So when you engage with people for the first 30 days, I think there's let's think about it. Okay. There's a selection bias. Who's going to come talk to you? The raving people.
I think it was the initial wave, and then it calmed down to people that were kind of willing to talk, and now it's just the raving.
Whatever. Yeah. So like when you open yourself to conversation on the internet, let's be honest, the likelihood that you get a balanced person who really is willing to take a step back and admit their flaws and understand how they're wrong and is not projecting something on you is low.
That's not what the intention of me talking about it was when I was engaging in those conversations. The way that I feel about that a lot of the times, you're not going to get through to the person who's angry on the internet.
Okay.
You generally won't. They're not going to sit down and have a valid conversation with you. They're not interested in resolving that. Most of the time, that person doesn't care, I find. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, if you don't say anything, I feel that on the internet today, if you do not say a thing in defense of yourself at all, everyone believes the only voice in the room, which is the one that's negative.
Okay.
And that's exactly what happened. So I put out a video about all this kind of stuff, released that, and immediately everyone was like, oh shit, maybe this is too far. And I got a whole bunch of people actually sending me positive posts for the first time since all that happened.
Cool. Cute.
So the stance that I've taken on all this is I go, here's what I saw from my perspective. This is what's been going on to me. And then there's kind of a camp of people that say, fuck you, I hate you. And then there's a camp of people that go, that seems reasonable. And I've just kind of hung out with people that think that it's reasonable because I don't know if there's another solution to that scenario.
Yeah, so I think that there is another solution to that scenario. And the thing, so that's what I'm trying to point out to you is there's a certain way in which you communicate, which I don't think is wrong, but gets consistently perceived, like we mentioned earlier, direct into evasive. So when we, like, you just, and I don't know if this makes sense, but I want you to, like, I don't know how to say this, but you're a programmer, so maybe this will make sense. I'm trying to put it in language that I don't understand that I hope you will, because I don't know what I'm talking about. Code your statements. I tried to talk to people. I presented proof. They became unhinged. So, like, if we code that statement, I did something right, they reacted wrong. What I hear frequently in the way that you communicate is that structure. Now, what makes this so confusing is that I'm not saying that that statement is factually incorrect. And if anyone who has dealt with other human beings knows this, you can tell another human being something that is factually correct, and they cannot give a damn and double down. In fact, that is usually what happens. So what I'm sort of getting is, like, this is the disconnect. I do wonder whether you are blind to, there's a certain kind of accountability that people are looking from you that you're not giving them. That doesn't mean...
What is it?
This is what I'm digging into. So one is maybe it's in the way you're giving it. So it's not that I'm not saying you need to take more accountability, okay? I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But my point is that when I see this pattern, and it could be just like, it's like a perceptual thing, because the way that you're talking is making people more upset, which doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's just like the way that I'm communicating is ineffective at resolving this issue. So a simple thing, and I'm not saying that you should do this, but I'm curious about this, is I've noticed that you tend to be incomplete. I've noticed that you tend to be complete with your answers. So when I look at that X thread, right, you try really hard and you do a great job. You're like, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened. Have you ever tried to be incomplete with the smugness? Just talk about the smugness.
If I try to be incomplete with it?
Incomplete with the whole story and just focus on the smugness.
What does that mean?
Let me
like not give any context whatsoever?
Yeah. Let's say yes to that. I think that's a bit of hyperbole, but
just an emotional response?
No, just say, hey guys. So basically, you know, when you tell the narrative, you start with, like, I made a mistake, everyone made mistakes, I was smug. And then there's a lot that comes after that. How would you feel about just ending it after that first paragraph?
I hate that.
Okay.
I have like an immediate, emotionally angry response.
Dr. K maybe is honing in on something better than how I would view this, but I feel like the issue here, or maybe we're kind of like approaching the same thing from different angles. The issue here, the reason why he doesn't like that is because it's very hard to admit a mistake or apologize for something without providing some rationale, because you want to justify what you did, and it helps to absolve you of some of the guilt of the apology. Like, there's a big difference between, listen, I'm sorry I was an asshole to you yesterday. You were just bugging me so fucking much, it was driving me crazy. That feels a lot different to a person than just saying, listen, I'm sorry I was an asshole to you yesterday. Those two statements are worlds apart, and people don't always know that. They don't perceive that themselves if they're the ones making the apology. But if you start to justify whatever behavior it is, or give even an explanation for whatever behavior you're exhibiting, if you start to explain that behavior after an apology, the apology basically is defunct. It will never feel like an apology to a person. Now it just feels like I don't even know what it feels like. It's just like you're just like continue to argue, basically.
Response against that? Because it feels like idiocracy.
Okay.
It feels like, that's too long, didn't read, I don't need all those words when few words do gooder. I hate that shit. Like, I super hate that kind of communication of like, there's a lot of people who say like, oh, you should just say my bad, guys. No, that does not in any way explain a situation. That doesn't tell you any information that is real. It is hand waving for them.
Like, hand waving doesn't explain, right? He's not looking to explain. He's looking to absolve. That's why he has to have the rest of it there. I don't know if he's like perceiving this about himself or not. I'm not sure.
Masses in a way that is disingenuous to what happened and disingenuous to the people that are involved. I feel like to do that would be just me lying for the sake of lying so that people would fuck off. I really hate that.
Jeez.
That absolutely feels like idiocracy to me.
Damn.
100%.
Idiocracy. Damn.
I don't like doing hand-waving gestures for the sake of hand-waving gestures.
Damn.
I don't like that at all.
Damn.
And I don't know if that's a wrong thing to feel, but that feels fucked up to me.
No, I think it's
could do
great.
that. I could go on the internet and just be like, oh yeah, my bad, guys, but like that's not real. It doesn't make sense.
I think that's great. So I think what I liked about that response, my hope, so we're not here to like rehab your PR, right? We're just here to have a conversation. And at the same time, over the last 2 hours, there's something about the way that I hear you talk that rubs me the wrong way. There's something about the way that you talk that seems
the thing that is wrong is that despite the fact that he's using all of the correct words, it seems, and that on paper, if we were to semantically parse all of the statements, it feels like we've hit all the correct points. But at the end of all of this, the emotional feeling we're left with is it really doesn't feel like you're sorry about anything. It really doesn't feel like you think you even did anything that wrong. That's the feeling you get. And the reason why is because of what I said earlier. It's because there's always an explanation. There's always an absolution. There's always some way to justify kind of what he did, but then apologize. He's basically saying like, listen, my response wasn't perfect, but what do you expect? I'm human, you know? That's like every explanation basically comes down to that in more words.
Dismissive. So I'll tell you where that.
No, I agree with that.
Right. So
No,
it's
I
like,
agree.
I made a mistake. We all made mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So there's something about your sentence construction. It's like, oh yeah, Thor, I'm sorry I cheated on you, bro. I really do love you. You know, we both have flaws in this marriage.
Yeah.
Like, do you see what that? We're not married, but you see what I mean?
Now that you've cheated on me.
Yeah. So there's something, and I don't think, and this is what's so tricky is like, I don't think you're wrong. Like I don't, and what we
The
got
way that
from
I
you.
feel about it
Yeah.
is that I don't even know if the word, it doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like
Appeasement.
It feels like appeasement for the sake of appeasement.
Yeah.
It feels like they're asking for something that they know is not real, and I'd be giving them something that we both know is not real for the sake of giving something that's not real, so that they stop being mad about something that doesn't make sense to me.
This is the thing that is like the intellectualizing, that's not understanding the subjective or emotional component at all to speech, I guess, or to the interaction. Like when you say, I feel like I'm giving them something that isn't real, well, they know that you think you had some kind of justification for how you acted. Otherwise, you wouldn't act that way, right? There must be, obviously. Everybody already knows that. What they're looking for is, or actually, no, what I just said was true, but they're actually perceiving you correctly. You're just frustrated that they're not perceiving what you want them to perceive. You want them to perceive an apology, but you're transmitting a justification. They're receiving a justification, and they're asking for an apology. But all you're doing is justifying and trying to absolve yourself. That's what you're doing over and over again. And you're frustrated that that's what they're getting. But that's what you are doing, right?
Yeah. So I think I think the key thing there is I was trying to figure out what won me over when you said that. And I'd be super curious if like how chat.
Wait, hold on, sorry.
It feels like they're asking for something that they know is not real, and I'd be giving them something that we both know is not real for the sake of giving something that's not real, so that they stop being mad about something that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So I think I think the key thing there is I was trying to figure out what won me over when you said that. And I'd be super curious if like how chat reacts to that as well. I'm not looking. I don't think you should, but because I think that that's what people are missing from you is like when you, and this is what I think makes you great, is when you actually, your best content is not when you're logical. Your best content is when you're emotional. And the logic supports it. Like there's logic there. But you're like, look, I'm not willing to do that. Could I do that? Absolutely. I just don't think that's right. Yeah. I think that this is like a stupid fucking appeasement world. I'm not going to be like all of the other streamers who post bullshit apology videos for the sake of appeasement and virtue signaling. I think that I kind of fucked up. I'm not done. This is a fucking hardcore WoW. People die in hardcore WoW.
Wait. Not to be actually, of course, there can be times where you can be sorry for being mad, and it's justifiable to explain on why one got mad, but how often would you say it's better to just say sorry without explaining versus sorry with an explanation? Okay, so the hyper-technical truth is it's not wrong to provide an explanation or to justify what you did. When you're apologizing for something, what people are actually looking for, whether they realize it or not, is they're looking to make sure that the internal model they have of you is correct, that you're a good person they want to be around, and that what you did was a mistake and won't happen again. Because if it wasn't a mistake and it can happen over and over again, then their model of you is incorrect and they'll view you differently and they want to be around you. So if you want to apologize, but you also want to explain your actions, the explanation has to be such that you're aware that what happened wasn't acceptable and it won't happen again. So for instance, okay, let's say that you say, let's say you get home from work and you snap at your girlfriend, wife, husband, boyfriend. You get home, you're like, fucking don't talk to me, you fucking cunt. Get the fuck out of my face. I want to play some League, right? Let's say that you do that. Okay, you get into a fight over it. And then that night, okay? So there's like three kind of apologies. You could say, so the standard good apology, I guess, would be like, hey, listen, I snapped at you earlier. That wasn't fair. It wasn't right. I'm sorry for that, okay? So you explain what you did wrong. You said you want to do it again. You apologize for it, okay? Sure, that's a standard decent apology. The bad apology, okay, would be the Thor one where you go, listen, earlier when I came home, I snapped at you. I just came home from work. I was really tired. You got right in my face. Like it was just like after dealing with my boss all day, after dealing with employees all day, like I come home and the first thing I have is like you know, confronting me and shit. And like, yeah, I snapped and I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. that's not an apology. You fully justified your actions, right? But what's happened in the other person's mind is like, okay, well, so this is going to happen again, right? Because you basically feel completely justified in what you did. So fuck me, I guess, right? And the takeaway, the shortcut takeaway, the simple takeaway is like, well, just don't explain, just apologize, right? But technically the explanation is not necessarily bad, but then you have to go to like the next level of apologizing, which requires a whole bunch of awareness of what's going on. So you could say, so the third level apology, I guess, if you want to explain as well or justify your behavior or whatever as well, could be like, hey, listen, earlier I snapped at you. I deal with a lot of stress at work, and sometimes I come home and when you start talking to me too, like it's also like really stressful. Like I snapped at you, it wasn't okay. This scenario doesn't work. We have to figure out a way to avoid this thing happening in the future. So I don't know if maybe I need to take a 20-minute walk after work to cool off so that when I come home, I'm not already like stressed out, or if there's some way that I can communicate to you better, right? You have to acknowledge or identify, even though you are giving an explanation for your behavior, how can you short circuit that explanation so that it doesn't crop up over and over and over again in the future? Like that can be a way to deal with it too. Arguably that's better than the simple apology because it shows much more understanding of like where the problem is coming from and then how to avoid it happening again in the future. But yeah, so all that to say, it's not necessarily wrong to explain why you did what you did, but there's an explanation that you give that's like a medical diagnosis where you're explaining a thing to diagnose a problem, ideally to fix it. And then there's the justification of like, well, I did this for these reasons, which makes it totally valid and understandable why I did that thing. And if those reasons ever pop up again, I'm going to keep doing it, you know? Oh, Jesus.
Like, I think you've been accused of making fun of another mage or something like that too. Like I saw some post about that. I don't know if that's true or not true, but look, it's Twitch.
We can talk about that if you want. That was my bad.
Yeah, and like it, but like that's fine, right? Like, I mean, I play Dota like not as much as I would like to anymore, and I got to play Expedition 33. But when I play an online video game, especially an MMORPG where tensions are high, I'm gonna blame my teammates. I do it all the time, right? And if I say something like that, it feels dismissive. But something about what you just said, you're like, this is the line in the sand that I'm drawing. I've tried my best. I admit I have blind spots. Some of this stuff is a disconnect for me. I think you got to really work on that. Right. So I would I'm thinking about what that practically looks like. But I really think that something about the way that you construct your sentences, which is objective on one hand, but I think it can be both. I think it's objective, and I think there's a little bit too much dismissal. It feels that way when I listen to you.
So when I'm talking about this kind of stuff, what I'm trying to get across is this seems like the most realistic scenario. This is what I saw from my side. It's not me trying to cast blame away from myself. It's going, no, we all fucked up. That's the reality of the situation. We all fucked up. And I think what people want is they want me to go, no, it's my bad. But my bad is a lie. So sure. I don't want to do that because it feels like I'm being asked to give bullshit for the sake of giving bullshit so that other people can be like, oh, I love this bullshit. We're cool now because we both realize that we both bullshitted each other in this situation. It's not real. None of that is real. It's hand wavy.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Now I'm going to ask you a question that please don't clip this out of context. Or if someone clips this out of context, please add someone post underneath with a reply this portion, okay? So you say you do your best to look at it objectively and you conclude this is bullshit. And I'm not saying you're wrong, okay? So I
look at it objectively based on my subjective experience.
Yes. So let's assume for a moment that you are a narcissist.
Okay. That's going to get clipped.
I know. But it's like, I think this is really where the money is. And this is not just about you. This is about everybody, myself included. I run this exercise with myself all the time. If a narcissist goes through the process that you go through, they will end up in the same place that you end up.
Which is likely why people make the accusation.
I didn't know they did that, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So like that's the problem that you're dealing with. And it's
I don't know that.
Huh?
That's the thing. For me, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I know.
Right. So think about that. Right. Like that's the problem. And this is the problem. Like I don't know if this makes like that's the problem. Is that if I listen to you, are you someone who is objective, who has done like all the like is your representation thorough and objective, or is this the construction of a narcissistic mind that's just defending itself and things like that?
The problem that leads into is that goes down to, are you willing to have a conversation with me? Or do you just want to believe the narrative that you already want to believe?
Not really.
Agree 100%. Well, and that's why you're fucked, bro. Because the internet is not interested in having 90% of the internet is not interested in having conversations. And you will see this all the time on take any political subreddit or any political streamer, and you'll see that people are not.
The reason why I disagree with this is because, and I don't want to say he's a narcissist because I don't know him well enough, but the reason why I just don't agree with this is because sometimes people who fall into this mindset, maybe Thor isn't or whatever, but sometimes people that fall into this mindset have this assumption that like, if I can just explain enough, you'll always agree with me. If you don't agree with me, it's just because I haven't explained enough. Just give me another chance to argue it again and I can get you on my side, you know? And I think that's a really dangerous mindset to be in.
Not interested in having conversations. And I do think there's a lot of weird stuff going on with you too, but like, that's like, parasocial and stuff like that.
The
But
thing, though, legitimately, dude, is we built up a community of specifically people that have conversations about things. That's why, after all of this, we're still sitting at like 6,000 to 10,000 people on a daily basis. That doesn't happen in a situation that is like I meticulously made sure that we had a community where we could talk about stuff on a logical basis and try to work things out outside of that. And I've been pushing that on this channel for 8 years. And I don't think I'd have a community if I built one that was based on instant emotional reaction, because they'd just be like, "Oh, he's a piece of shit," you know.
yeah, so there are absolutely communities like that, you know, and I think it's great that you don't, and maybe that's why people are coming from other communities to you, because it was a group WoW thing. So there's like a lot of other communities that are interacting with yours. The thing that I would encourage you to do, and this is for everyone, I do this on a daily basis, is assume for a moment that you're a narcissist, and think about.
I think his viewership did take, I think, a really big tumble, right? Like, I think he had like 10K plus average viewers, and I think it's dropped. Is it below 5K? He actually schismed a huge portion of his community, I think.
If I'm narcissistic, what would I be missing? Right? Like, even so, I'm trying to think of a.
It's still massive. Yeah, it might be massive. Sure. I mean, 5K concurrent viewers is still a big stream, but I don't know how to use this fucking website. When did the drama happen? Oh wait, this goes years back. Jesus. So his concurrent viewership had gotten up to around anywhere from 10 to 20K. I'd probably average it at like 15K. And now it sits at around 7 to 8K. So not like completely, well, that's a pretty big ding. Jeez. Although this growth was fairly short. This was like 2 months of, so it could have been declining anyway, possibly. But
an example. So I recently had an interpersonal conflict where
yeah, somebody said OnlyFans was massive views for everyone in WoW, to be fair. So maybe his actual viewership decline isn't as significant as it seems. It just looks that way because he was getting a big temporary bump from the OnlyFans stuff.
I felt hurt by someone I'm close to. Okay. And as I was thinking through all the things that this person has done wrong to me, I stopped for a second and I was like, am I just being a little bitch? Am I like, is this genuine? Is this fair? Like, what are all of the counter examples? Am I just glossing over all of the stuff that they do right? Am I ignoring all of the stuff that I do wrong? Am I ignoring when this person lets me down? What is my contribution to this system in which I am disappointed? So
Okay.
these
I mean,
are
that seems normal to me, though. that
okay, good.
reaction.
Yeah. But I think a lot of times when we feel hurt, we're not. We don't do that, right? So
No, that's the first.
okay, cool. I think that's great. I mean, if you're already doing that, that's awesome. Then I think the main thing then that I would encourage you to really think about is like this disconnect, and what's the variable in there. And what I would strongly encourage that you do is that variable is going to be divided into two portions. One is that the amplification, the disconnect, the question mark of the situation. You understand what I'm saying, or not really?
Yeah. I mean, like I'm kind of understanding, but I think it's hard for me to understand how I'm supposed to respond to that if the requirement for the response is you need to make it incomplete and dumb it down and hand wave it. That makes me feel like I'm just lying to people.
No. I think your
Super doesn't
response to
understand.
when I said, "What do you think about that?" Your response to that kind of won me over. I don't think you should do that. So,
Okay.
so now what we're talking about is for anyone who is in a situation where I behave in a certain way, the world responds to me in this way, and there's a gap between these two things. This is the scenario that I'm talking about. So in that scenario, what's the question mark? What's the amplifier? So there are certain things that we can attribute to things outside of you. So people have parasocial relationships, people are projecting, people don't like me, whatever. Like people are upset, whatever. There's all the stuff that they do, and then there's all the stuff that you do. And this is where I think it's hard, but I think a really good example of what came out of today, which hopefully feels okay to you, is when I'm direct, other people think I'm evasive. I think those are the kinds of nuggets that I have seen transform lives and literally save marriages.
It's just funny because like I've had effectively the same conversation with the moderation team. Was like I use the same terminology. It's like that feels like idiocracy. I don't feel like dumbing down my language and just being dishonest about it to hand wave it makes sense. And I feel greasy doing that. I don't know how else to describe that.
Are you hearing me talk about dumbing things down at this point?
When I say dumbing things down, I mean like the idea of like, oh, my bad, bro. And just kind of leave it like that. That doesn't make sense.
What are you hearing me say to you right now?
Of a way to resolve the language of, you know, I feel like I'm being objective. They feel like I'm being evasive. And to me, it comes across as I'm over-explaining. I'm giving too much context. I'm making the scenario of myself as a player within that rather than this is what I didn't know and that's it. And then we walk away.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. So I understand where our disconnect is.
Okay.
I have removed dumbing down from the equation of my solution space when I talk to you. Take it off the table. Done. Doesn't feel right. I agree. What I'm saying is that if we look at I'm being direct, they feel like I'm being evasive. The tactical options to solve that involve way more than dumbing things down.
Okay.
So that's what I think. Yeah, I would focus on that. So like, don't dumb things down. Be authentic. But there's also a way, because like, right, so fundamentally this is an issue of communication. It's an issue of understanding. It's an issue of getting your point across, arguably listening to other people's. And so that is a skill. It is an art form. There's a way to do it well and do it poorly. Now, what a lot of people do, which I think is bad, which I really appreciate you standing up against, is dumbing things down, virtue signaling, pro forma apology.
I hate that. Like, I
hate it
do.
too.
I hate the idea of, here's my ukulele sad YouTuber video. Let me just lie to the camera for 5 minutes. Because that's fucking dumb.
I hate it too.
Wow.
So my point is that if we look at like, you know, like,
and I feel like that's what I was being asked to do. And I'm like, no, here's how I see it. And they're good. You know?
Yeah. And my point is that somewhere between the pro forma apology and what comes out of your mouth, there's going to be something in the middle there, which is an adaptation of what you do, which feels authentic, feels truthful, feels complete, and there's literally something about the way that you talk where if I code your responses, that's the best way I know how to put it. It's kind of like there's just a
Makes you keep coming back to Factorio. It's the best game ever, and also I can't do real life political stuff right now, so this is a good mind occupier while my court case stuff goes through.
There's a theme of what feels like a lack of accountability from a listener's perspective. I don't think you're not taking accountability. Objectively.
It feels that way.
But what I'm saying is that the limbic circuits of my brain, the emotional circuits of my brain, when I hear you talk, it feels like you're leaving something out. It feels somehow incomplete or unbalanced. And I know that's a very difficult problem for you to solve.
I don't like that. Doesn't give me a lot of tools, right?
It's hard. So that's where like I'm going to think a little bit about how to bridge that gap. But like something in that is where the money is. I feel really confident about that. It's not a pro forma apology, but it is also thinking about the way that you make statements that rubs people the wrong way. And then the other interesting thing that I really have to like encourage you to think about is it hard for you to see a different way to use your words? Because in your mind, you're only able to see things one way.
The way that I put that up, the way that I put out messaging like that, especially public messaging, the internet will find any chink in the armor to try to unravel it into saying that you're a liar in some way.
Yep.
We've both seen this. So what I try to do is I go, okay, so instead of putting the ego first on this and being like, I did the best thing or I did the worst thing or being an emotional platitudes for this kind of shit or virtue signal for it, I just go, here's everything that happened from my perspective, and that's my story.
Okay, you ready for the mindfuck?
Sure.
You said that what you put out, people will try to find the chink in the armor, right?
If he doesn't do something like a long apology video, he can't really expect people to let it go. That's not satisfying to anyone. Well, what's happened is he's revealed kind of, I think, his character more, and people don't like that as much. It's possible if you never get exposed, this is like way more brutal than I wanted to sound, but like people can have a thought that you're a certain type of person, and then you get into a certain environment or conflict, and then people see something else comes out of it. That's not a simple matter of, well, I just need to apologize correctly for it. Because remember, I think intuitively, even if we don't understand this intellectually, intuitively an apology is about saying, hey, the behavior that I exhibited isn't actually emblematic of my character. It was a mistake, and here's why it won't happen again. That's really what an apology is hopefully conveying to somebody. All of that is hopefully being conveyed in a good apology. But his issue, I think, is more of one of character that I think people just weren't perceiving until now, and now that they are, the fix for this is not necessarily going to be a simple apology. It probably requires a pretty substantial re-rigging of character, which is very difficult to do past the age of like 14, I think.
They're going to do it anyway, but yeah.
No, they're not going to do it anyway. The way that you put things out makes them want to find the chink in your armor.
It doesn't make sense.
Streamer man, don't know. Sorry, off-topic question. Are there any steel manning this administration's immigration policy aside from some? No, I don't steel man Trump admin anymore. I don't even trust most of you guys asking that. I don't know if you're like Trumples that are trying to find somebody to actually justify your shit, because all of your conservative commentators have literally given up on trying to justify this administration, and they've just shown their hand at being full-on fucking crazy neo-Nazi fasci types. So no, I don't steel man the Trump admin anymore. It is not. I don't do that. There are other people. Actually, nobody will else do that. So go ask the Trump admin why they do what they do. Good luck.
I know.
That sounds to me. Sounds obsessive. I need, like, there's a necessity to find a problem when there isn't one?
No, I think you're missing the point. The way that you communicate information, the way that you speak makes people want to find the chink in the armor, because people communicate. Yeah. I know it's hard, man. It's wild. It's crazy. I'm with you. Right? So there's something that you're doing that from a logical perspective makes perfect sense. The emotional energy of your words, and I'm not right about this, okay? I could be wrong. But I really suspect that this is where the money is, where something about the way that you present yourself, which, by the way, went away when you got pissed off about when I was like, what do you think about just doing a mea culpa? And you're like, fuck that. I was in your corner. But here's the thing. The way that
so
you talk...
You need more of an emotional interaction.
Because why do I want to poke you in the armor? Because of your logic? No, because of your emotions. That reflex, this is what you got to understand, Thor. That reflex comes from the emotional energy that you're sending and the emotional energy that they're receiving. Now, this gets more complicated because you are right that this is an unsolvable problem. Because there's only so much that you can do in this situation. That at the end of the day, there are going to be people on the internet that are just there to meme, that are just there to make your life worse, that have little lives where they feel frustrated and then they look at a punching bag and they say, hey, I'm going to punch this person, I'm going to knock this person down a peg. And the tragedy there is that they don't truly have little lives. They truly have far greater lives than they have the potential of far greater lives if they stop spending all of their cognitive and emotional energy trying to knock some random fucking guy on the internet down a peg. Then they would really be happy.
All the things I try to do on the internet. That's why I do all. That's
yeah, it's tough, man.
That aspiration that you put there. That's why I do the stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's great.
So brave.
We run game jams and all that.
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
It's because this shit is a waste of fucking time.
Yep.
Wow.
It is the same reason that I have a short out that's like, stop looking at shorts. Go the fuck outside. And I know that sounds like self-inflationary of like aggrandizing for that shit. But like, dude, the internet's a fucking mistake.
No, so here now we get to it. You said, I know it sounds that way. It doesn't sound that way. If I read your words, huh?
When I say it that way, it sounds that way to me.
But it doesn't sound that way to me.
That's ridiculous to me.
Yes, I know it's ridiculous. So yeah, I know it's hard.
That's the only
so
thing that matters also,
the
right?
words, if I were to write them down and we said, hey, is this person arrogant? Maybe it would be the answer that you get. The emotional energy that you add to that doesn't make it come across as arrogant at all. It makes it come across, for me, I get inspired by that. I believe that. That sounds believable to me. So there's some
the perception disconnect is when I talk about a situation while removing the emotion from it, when to me that sounds like the most logical way to communicate. And the most objective way to communicate, which seems like it would be the best way for people to understand the scenario fully. And that's the most disconnected for other people because it makes them feel like I'm being evasive.
I think that is one step in the right direction for you. And that's because human beings are not logical communicators.
I'm well aware of that.
We're emotional communicators, right? So I think the energy that you add to the equation, like, matters a lot. And what you're trying to remove, and it sort of makes sense, right? Because you have a strategy. You've got a particular strategic approach, and that's what got you to where you are. And I know you've tried a lot, but I think this fundamental thing, I don't think this has changed over the whole course of this.
No.
And I think the really hard thing is I don't know that it needs to change, because I think part of what makes you who you are, part of what makes you valuable, part of what attracts the community, because there are a lot of people out there who think like you, who are tired of emotional communication, who have people in their lives where you're like, look, this is the reality of the situation. I cook dinner 4 nights a week, you cook dinner 1 night a week, and you order takeout the other 2 nights of the week. That is the objective scenario. This needs to change. And they're like, nah. So
Whoa,
I think that the way you communicate is like an oasis in a desert for a lot of people. So it's not bad. It's just like, this is like something that I think can be leveled up. And a big part of that.
The biggest thing is the more that I have to deal with this just slew of shit with this,
the less
I've been emotional about it, because it's effort.
Well, so if we were to take that statement as true and we were to make a predictive model, what happened to you would be in line with this prediction. That if our hypothesis is that emotional communication is what connects with people, especially on the internet. And as you become more burnt out, which by the way is absolutely going to happen, as your corpus callosum, you're just fried. You're just blackened at this point. You've got no emotional energy left. And the more you communicate, the angrier people get. I really hope people leave you the fuck alone, because I think it's like enough is enough. I'm happy to say that. Like, I don't usually advocate for people doing that. Maybe people think that I'm a narcissist or whatever. Like, that's fine. But I don't think this is about you. I think this is like when someone makes whatever kind of mistakes you made, and whether you were mean to people or not, whether you went to the bathroom and look something up, or you have a butt plug that is vibrating in Morse code to give you the solution, is connected to I really don't care. I don't know about the reality.
How crazy were those moves? Did we ever come away? Is it 100% that he was cheating in that chess tournament, or?
I think it's just like, we all make mistakes. I'm not saying you did or you didn't. It's just like, come on, y'all. Right? Is this really what we're doing now? Like, is this how we're spending our days, how we're spending our time? Are you perfect? No. Are you a regular human being? Yes. So that's kind of where I am. I know it's confusing for you. I
mean, that starts to make sense. I think the thing that bothers me is if someone were to go to me, right, and talk in the way that I'm talking in that objective fashion, I go, oh, cool, here's all the information. I'm going to compile it with that information and then come up with my own way of how I feel about this. And what I'm seeing more and more now, especially on the internet, right, is loud, bombastic, emotional response is what everyone wants for stuff. But we've never had it that way. I've never interacted that way. I've been not that way this entire time. And now for me, suddenly that's a problem. Suddenly that's a bad guy thing, which is like, that's really fucking weird for me, man. Like, that's not what I expected. That's not the response that I expect. It doesn't really make a huge amount of logical or emotional sense to me. So I'm just like, okay, so you don't think I'm doing this thing. Here's more information. That's not enough. Here's more information. That's not enough. Here's more information. Then eventually it's like, fuck you. I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
it's
so
like there's no other solution at that point.
There's two things. Like I had one kind of emotional response, which is like, you're like, that makes sense to me. The really interesting thing is your response of that makes sense to me. I'm not saying, don't read too much into it. I was just laughing because what I sent you in that moment was not logical. What I sent you in that moment was emotional.
Yes.
Right?
I have the capacity to understand
Yeah,
emotions.
yeah. But it's interesting because there's so many times where I've tried to send you logical signals and then there's a disconnect. But you can easily argue that it's apples and oranges. The second thing that I want to say, and I know you have emotional capacity, like I get that. You love your ferrets. They show up there. So the other thing that I think is interesting to note is that I think that you are on the receiving end of, not just you, but basically this happens. So there's a group of parasocial nomad haters on the internet. That's what I call them.
Yeah.
I
Chat
hate
hoppers
this
is what they're
word.
generally called on Twitter.
Okay, cool. I know that.
Parasocial.
But, like,
God, I
so
hate
so
this
what I
word
From
so
one
much.
community to another when there's like a big drama.
Exactly. So these are the people that follow the drama. So whoever, and then the problem is if you've created a community that values a certain kind of communication, and the chat hoppers show up, everything that you've built will get dominated or swept away.
That's why we ban it all. Yep.
Okay.
Knowing that full well. And there's a couple of ways to handle that, right? That I feel.
Got 'em.
Is when someone comes in and they just make like the copy paste hate statement, it's very clear that they don't care. We ban them. And they put an unban request, and sometimes they'll be like, hey, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. And then they come back and they're like, hey, I like watching the stream, or they tell the mods to kill themselves, right? And like, obviously, if they tell the mods to kill themselves, they just stay banned, and that happens all the time. But if they're like, hey, this I didn't realize this mattered so much, sometimes they end up joining the community, and it's fine. It's just that first interaction, we don't want that like a million times in the chat. Like that shit sucks, and it's not 50-50, but the mods do get a lot of hate, man, like a massive amount. It sucks for them.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's hard to deal with. It's something that basically every streamer deals with, where the moment that you're at the top of LSF, you get like this influx of audience, which also, I don't think that's like LSF's fault. That's just the...
I think it's the nature of like a gathering of people that are either rooting for the downfall, rooting for an emotional big moment, or like want to be part of that. But I do still think that there's a large amount of people that are engaging in that because it's like their reality show. It's like their TMZ. It's like they're like, oh man, I'm part of that moment. Remember that moment when that thing happened? That was so funny. And like, I feel like there's probably even some of those people that will meet someone like at an event where they engage in one of those things and they won't think it's real. They think it's just like a cartoon character,
Yeah, I've seen that a lot too, unfortunately. But anyway, we've been at it for like almost 3 hours, bro. How you feeling?
Yeah, fine. Like, to be honest with you, I think so far this has been really productive because to me, like, dude, I don't know. Like that seems wild to me that people just want it. Like, I don't know. It seems wild to me that people just want an emotional response for that. When in reality, I find that, like I explained earlier, I find that to be a disingenuous thing. I don't want to be that guy that goes and makes a fucking apology video.
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of people who would be satisfied by that, but
Never
please don't take away.
apologize.
I think, like, I mean, you convinced me, right? And I've not done that when people get upset with me. So I won't just say, yeah, my bad, unless I really believe that. So that there have been times where I've made mistakes where I will say, like, I still remember, I'm happy to say it again. There was one time early on in the days of streaming that I made fun of people with micro penises. And that is like one of the things that I regret the most. Because it's like easy to do that.
That's an easy fruit, yeah.
It's easy, but it's like out of all of the people, like in terms of like punching down and stuff, like out of all the people who have it so hard for, just us to pile on and like, ha, you have a small dick, like that's not something that's in their control. And by the way, you can have a fulfilling sexual life with a micro penis. I thought about, I just became a degenerate gamer for a moment and stopped thinking about people in my office who struggle with those kinds of problems.
Yeah. I think that's actually really interesting because that's like the internet, man. Is like, I don't even know, like, I feel like if somebody's going to call you that, like on the internet, if somebody's like in a lobby and like, you have a micro penis, they don't actually mean that. They just want to say some shit. That's like some kid on Xbox saying you fucked your mom.
Yeah, right.
Like,
They don't actually mean it. Well, as opposed to what? Like they actually know the size of your dick and it's below, 2 standard deviations enough to be micro. Like what? Okay.
So like deep within me is 4chan. Like much like ChatGPT, deep within my bones is 4chan. And so anyway, I was just saying, like, so sometimes I made mistakes and I'll own up to those. But I don't think don't compromise that. But I think there's like something in the middle of letting more of your authentic emotion out, and also be super careful about the way that you, even in your own head, sterilize your interactions and sterilize your contributions, which I think you do.
It's comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable, but I think you do that.
When the scenario is like super vitriolic, it's comfortable to sterilize it. It's comfortable to have like more of a logical conversation about it because it's easier to process.
Yep.
It is less easy to, like, if I'm gonna have a big emotional response, I feel like I'm being manipulative to another person because I could do that. I could just sit down and be like, I'm gonna have a big emotional response now, but that's not that's not how I am. It's not the person I am.
So I think it's an issue of, so you mentioned at some point that this has been a challenge that you've had before. I don't even remember what we were talking about. So I think it's really about, and this is for anyone else too, like, we all just have to decide. When you say this is the person that I am, we all just have to decide whether we want to continue. Like, am I just saying, hey, this is who I am and I don't want to change this? And then
No,
I
don't think that's the case.
Well, I'm giving options. So I'm sort of speaking rhetorically, right? So
This is really important because you can be a certain type of person, understand the reactions that you elicit from others, and say, I get that people, have this response to me because of these things I do, but like, I'm fine with that. I get it. It's just the person I am. I don't want to change it. Whatever. That's a totally legitimate way to approach things. It's good to be aware of that. Those are the feelings you have.
So we all have to make decisions for ourselves about if this is the way that I am. Do I want to continue to be this way? Do I not want to continue to be this way? And then there's going to be a line in the sand of like what a level of compromise feels authentic and okay, and what doesn't. What feels like growth? What feels like giving a piece of yourself away?
Yeah, because like for me, I feel pretty happy with the way that I communicate generally. I don't generally have a problem with that. And I like being able to communicate objectively, either with, in my relationships, friends, people in the community. That feels fine to me. And I think there's a lot of people that actually like that about the way that I communicate. It's like, hey, Thor's talking about all the things of all the, because we'll get a whole bunch of stories in that come in from the damn internet. They're like, the fucking sky's on fire. And then you look at it and you're like, the sky's not on fire. This outhouse over here was on fire. It's not that big a deal. Right. And I find that there's very few islands of that shit online, man. Like there's very few islands and people will be like, wait a minute, let's look into that before we start freaking out. Would it be easier for me to just like dive into the emotion first? Yeah. Would it be honest? No. Would it be quick views? 100%.
Good job.
Yeah.
None of that shit makes sense to me. And like, that's why I've always communicated that way. And it's not even a thing of like, I'm not willing to change. I'd be lying.
Wow.
Like I'd just be straight up lying about all of these scenarios if that was the case. If it wasn't like, here's all the things as I see it, here's all the facts as I felt them, right? As the things that I went through, I'd be a piece of shit. I'd be just like a grifter on the internet that's just trying to garner as many views as possible. And that's fucking atrocious. Like I hate that. I really hate that.
What are you hearing me say?
I think I went on a rant there. Okay. It's not even really about like what you said. It's more like that kind of just like triggered an internal monologue. And I was like, nah, I just went on a rant with it. Yeah.
And I'm with you there. I mean, I think that there are plenty of emotionally manipulative grifters on the internet. And
I'm not even saying that like that's I'm not even like calling people out and saying like the other side is an emotional grifter. It's more like, dude, like I can see how easy it is to manipulate people emotionally to gain money on the internet.
Yeah.
I don't ever even want to get near that.
So I have those kinds of thoughts, and I'm pretty sure that they're pretty narcissistic in my head. So when I have a thought like that, I'll just like leave this for y'all. I'm not accusing anyone, or certainly not you, but this is just what I've noticed is that sometimes when I'm like jealous of people, this may be just me, who are taking the easy path on the internet, it's really easy to get self-righteous.
I don't think it's easy. No, I mean,
for me,
not like that. I think it comes with other negatives, right? Like I'll give you an example, right?
Thank you.
You guys know like Keemstar. Keemstar makes a bunch of content that's based on like calling out scenarios, making a lot of drama, runs Drama Alert, right? I don't envy that. That's got to be a tough as fuck job. That dude probably absorbs more hate than most people on the internet just by the nature of the content that he provides to the internet, which is bombastic, which is divisive, which is emotional. I don't want to get near that because that sounds fucking awful to me and everyone that was engaging in my content.
I see what you mean.
So if I went down that route, I don't think it's easy. I think it would be easier to get a reaction, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but the reaction is not what you want.
So then I think that's more from me. Like I think that's narcissistic. So I think the thought process I have in my head is different from what you're describing.
Okay.
Usually I'll walk myself there, but I have that kind of thought. But anyway. Yeah, any last thoughts or questions before we wrap up for the day?
I'm interested in what your thought was now.
What do you mean?
When you said you had a different thought from like a different pathway for that, like what did you mean?
A different pathway for
thinking about that scenario of like
the narcissistic scenario?
Yeah.
So I think it's similar to what you do, but I think what I usually do is I notice that I'll see that there are creators that are doing things that I think, so there's one creator in particular that I used to like their content, and I noticed that they basically made a piece of content where there's a subreddit that I frequent, and they basically, what they did is they looked at the most upvoted content on that subreddit, made a video where they're literally reading out the top voted content things there.
I see a lot.
And so I was, and their video did incredibly well.
That's not us, is it?
Yep.
And so what I realized is like, oh, there's this niche subreddit. They're taking the best of this niche subreddit and basically distributing it on another platform.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
And so it really like, it's never fun to see. So I was disappointed for two reasons. One is that like I respected this person's content. Like when they sit down and they actually open their mouth, when they offer like commentary, which I assume is maybe it's not, maybe they're just
he's talking about, I don't even know what channels to be, but sometimes there are channels that are like, oh, today I'm presenting this fun, crazy fact or this weird, creepy story, whatever, but they're just like basically reading down like Reddit comments or, Wikipedia or something basically like that. Yeah.
Purposing it from elsewhere. But I really got the sense that this person had done a lot of like thinking about, and their commentary was what I really valued. And then I also, so when I saw this piece do well, there were two things that happened. One was that I felt like disappointed in the person. I was like, this is trash content. It's just like repurposed React kind of content. It was, I guess, React content, but it wasn't like, I started to realize why people don't like React content in that moment.
It's the description that people give of slop.
Yeah. So, and then the second thing that I realized is like, it's always sad to see how well slop performs.
True.
It does amazing. It's the same thing that we're seeing with like AI generated art, man. It's the same.
Yeah. So
I see it now. I think the scariest thing that I see, like in the gaming space, AI generated ads for games.
Wow.
And like you get into the game and it's like a phone game and everything's AI generated. The art is like just trash and they do amazing.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of downloads and you're like.
So there are people, and it's interesting, right? Because like game recognizes game. And one of the interesting things about being someone who is arguably knowledgeable in a couple of fields, is I see how easy it is to be successful when you actually don't know what you're talking about.
Damn.
So in like the wellness, medicine, self-help space, there are a lot of people who will talk about science, but there's a big difference between a scientific paper and the implementation of like a clinical intervention. And so a big thing that I see a lot, especially in the wellness space, is people will talk about things like dopamine detoxes and stuff like that. There's actually no data behind any of that stuff. They're like, I did a dopamine detox for 10 days and here's how it changed my life. And it's like
That makes a good story.
Yeah, so it makes a good story. So I think that there's, what I've noticed is that as you kind of dumb things down and make things accessible, your likelihood of like increasing in success goes up. But also you've got to be like super careful. But I think a lot of the stuff that some content creators in the wellness space say like works doesn't really work, right? And that's not the success of the content is not based on whether it works or not. The success of the content is whether other people think it's or interested in it, basically, right? And the most hilarious example of this is something called what's it called?
Yo, mama.
Not anal bleaching.
Jesus.
Sunning the butt or something.
Dude, what?
I gotta remember. So there was this trend on TikTok.
Wait, is that the one where they show their butts to to the sun?
Yeah. So people would do that, right? Because they're like, oh, this
They
part of
absorb the sun through their ass and then like gain medical shit for it. I've heard about this.
So the really
It's insane.
the really scary thing is that, so they'll say like, oh, like the butt doesn't get sunlight, right? And then what people don't understand is that since the butt doesn't get sunlight, it is not designed to receive sunlight, which means that you will get a sunburn.
You get a sunburn your
Yeah. People were getting, so there was like a medical concern. It was like a public health issue. Like dermatologists were dealing with a bunch of sunburned butts, like not butts, not cheeks, like the inside, because people would, they'd like open it wide. And because people don't understand that you don't, like, if you shave your scalp, if you shaved your hair today and you walked out in the sunlight, you get a sunburn on your head.
Crazy. Yeah.
So you need a certain amount of melanin, and like we don't have melanocytes in our bunghole.
Inside. No.
Like we don't have them there.
And no, that goes into like the craziest area of, see, that medical disinformation is scary. Like super, super scary. That's like the scariest thing. Because like, I think what it goes into is people want to believe it. They want to believe that they can do something.
Content
they don't want to feel
deputy?
powerless in a
Who's that?
situation like that. And you have the secret knowledge. And the secret knowledge is just behind a $5 paywall. That's only $5. And like, I hate that shit. Like I fucking, like that was like, that is actually the reason that we set up the Discord the way that I have it. Like the Discord is literally set up in like, here's focus groups, pay nothing, go talk to people in the field. If I don't know it, one of them will. Go. Right? Go interact with them. Because the idea of like siloing knowledge leads to that shit. It leads to the like, I'm going to make up some shit. And when I make up some shit, you're going to sunburn your ass. Like that's...
Yeah, so that opens up, I think, other cans of worms, medical disinformation. So like we have paywalled content, and so arguably we're guilty of that, but I think we're not in the same way. And I'm not.
The reason I get it this way is it's for areas I don't have knowledge in. I can't answer that, but maybe one of these other people can.
So,
and there's a consensus, not just like a silo.
Anyway, I think it's a fair complaint, and it's criticism that we have been accused of.
Really?
Oh yeah. So people think we're very, very like money oriented, which we're sort of money oriented, but like not really.
Your business, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that too is something that I think is like, I don't like that connotation. So people think that there's like a homogeneity there. So for example, like we launched like a membership in 2023. Sure. We have like some paid content and stuff. And the TLDR of it is like, I think it's so interesting to hear, but it was, the more free stuff you provide, when you build free stuff for a lot of people, it costs more, which is not something that I understood when I became a content creator.
That is absolutely the case.
And so that was something that like, I think a lot of people, I feel bad when people think of us as a business because we're like technically a business, but we don't operate like a business. In some ways we do. But I
think the problem is people don't know how to understand that business and doing something good is not mutually exclusive.
So I would even argue that business and doing something good is the best way to do things.
Yes.
And the reason for that is really simple. I went to a lot of places where doing good was very separated from business. So the number at the top of the list is like ashrams, nonprofits,
mushrooms,
spiritual teachers,
people
who are like philanthropic and were doing things for the good of the world.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I saw the largest abuses of power in those kinds of scenarios. There's a lot of like the moment that you become a nonprofit, like I've seen so many toxic work environments in investment banking and in nonprofits, because in nonprofits, it's like, we're doing it for the ferrets. We can't pay you a lot, but we're doing it for the ferrets. So one of the really interesting things that we tried to do very intentionally was like, I'm not your guru. If you want my help, I'm going to give you some stuff for free. And if you want this other stuff that takes a lot of energy and resources to build, you got to pay for it. And I think that interestingly enough, when I was training to become a psychiatrist, like creating a transaction protects us from a feeling of indebtedness. And the moment that you add indebtedness to the equation, the moment you start doing extra for your patients, doing things for free. If you do something for free, then like it makes things muddy. And that's what happens with a lot of these like spiritual organizations. So we kind of very intentionally did it, but we also get criticized for it, which I think is like also a fair criticism. Like I think that the people who say those kinds of things, I think they usually don't have information. But I think that they're, you know, it's a valid criticism on some level.
I think that makes sense. I mean, like with the rescue, I intentionally did not make it a charity. Like I was like, I'm not doing that, because the first thing I talked to people, I was like, hey, we're thinking about starting a rescue. First thing that showed up in chat is, oh, you're just going to try and take a tax break. And I was like, that's valid. I'm going to look into this more. And I was like, I don't want to take money from my left hand, put it in my right hand, and be like, I'm not paying taxes on that. Like, that's fucking weird, right? Because it's still technically it's all the same thing. We're all just meeting the same objective. So it's made it part of the business. And I just pay employees and do the whole thing. And like, yeah, Ferret Rescue makes money. It does. The ad revenue off of that allows me to hire people to run a rescue.
So
and pay for their medical and pay for their food. And like, that's not small.
I've also seen,
Remember when he made that announcement that I just want to announce today that all of our mods in Twitch chat are on a full medical plan? Oh my God.
I had a job at a place that was a nonprofit with a charitable mission, but was also like, and the problem is that oftentimes if you don't structure it like a business, it doesn't stay self-sustainable. Like,
yes.
So that's where things, and I found that, so a lot of times, like early on when, you know, we started our coaching program, a lot of people wanted to volunteer and we wouldn't let them. And so here's,
Yeah. I don't allow volunteers.
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing for me is that I've had a rule since the very beginning, which is you work for me, you get paid. That's
Yep.
it. Because it's so complicated otherwise. It's so complicated.
It gets so, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. So I think once you are in a position of like managing other people and also consistently delivering services, volunteers it becomes really hard. So when you're doing stuff for free,
There's like legal issues, there's all kinds of shit.
When you're doing stuff for free and when you're not paying people, like both of those things, I think it's just way easier. It's like, hi, I'm going to make a donut. The donut costs $1. I'm going to try to make it as affordable as possible. And that's something that if people think our stuff is overpriced, I think that's not really a fair criticism. Anyway, but so I think that there's, anyway, we're kind of getting off track, but
That's fine.
Anyway, any last thoughts or questions before we wrap up for the day?
No, I think that's it. I think this makes sense overall. Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
I think overall this makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's mostly just interesting to me because it's like, it's really easy to get into a state where you're just like, I'm fucking done with it.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get there. I also don't believe that human beings were meant for the social interactions we have online.
Yep,
I just
we're
don't.
not.
I don't think humans were built for this. I think we were built for like a little bit of friction inside of small social groups, but when you expand that to hundreds of thousands of people, no one's going to react correctly because it's just, that's not what we're made for as human beings. That's
Completely agree, man.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, I hope things calm down for you. I hope if people like watch this, like, you know, I'm sure that Thor made mistakes, but
Can you please get the Florida Pfizer study on it to my sensitive zeros? Maybe.
I don't think I don't think
know
it's
anything
fair.
about it.
I'll say that. I don't usually say those kinds of things, but you know, I'm going to go ahead and say that. Maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't there. I didn't watch it. I haven't seen everything that happened. But I like, can't we agree that like death threats and harassment and things like that is enough at some point?
No.
Yeah.
I think you split groups when you say that, and some people will be like, well, yeah, of course that's not okay, but this thing over here is okay. But what I found that I think is something that a lot of people forget online is when you make something, either a company or a person or a group, the subject of ridicule en masse, it empowers the people that think that that is an okay step. Like, we see that all the time. You see that with any type of social movement. You have people that legitimately have a concern, and then you have people that light cars on fire. Like, that's just how that goes. And the more people you have, the more that isolated extreme response group also expands. And I don't think that everybody who dislikes me is throwing death threats at me. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
The more people that don't like a person or a group, the more that increases.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Well said.
Yeah.
All right, take care, man. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
you too.
Let me see if I can.
Love you, babe.
There we go. GG.
There we go.
Okay. Thoughts, questions? How do y'all feel about how that went?
Wow.
So, post-game analysis. Easy. Meet people where they're at. Right? Meet people where they're at. That is the post-game analysis. So people saying this was anticlimactic? Yes. So this is not supposed to have a climax. So I think this is a really good example of what we were talking about, like even Thor and I were talking about.
Wait.
About what kind of content do you want to make on the internet? You know, what did people come here for today? There's what some of y'all may have come here for, and then there's what we're here to do. Now, sometimes what we're here to do overlaps with what y'all come here for. And sometimes it doesn't. Right? So I think that, like,
Watch him go over the
I thought today was very illustrative. It can't be the only emails and yeah, can you elaborate on the missing reasons? What a great.
What a great. What a great.
So let's talk about this.
Do you know about LDS recycling? Yes, but
The missing
that's
reasons.
unethical gameplay. So
Members of estranged parents
we don't
forums
engage
often
in
say
that.
their children never gave them any reason for the estrangement, then turn around and reveal that their children did tell them why. But the reasons their children give, the infamous missing reasons, are missing. My sons consistently refuse to reply to my emails and let calls go to voicemail, or barely speak if they do answer. They accuse me of being... Oh, sorry. Whoops. My sons consistently refuse to reply to my emails and let my calls go to voicemail, or barely speak if they do answer. They accuse me of being a terrible person, but won't elaborate about exactly what I've done. Well, sometimes they do, but it doesn't make sense, at least to me. For example, it's hard to be part of the birth of a grandchild if I didn't even know that I was going to have one. All of this started because of a personal email they felt entitled to read on my work computer. Okay? What were the other reasons her sons give? Not knowing about the birth of her grandchild can't be the only one. What was in the email that caused both her sons to cut her off? We're supposed to be distracted by the hinkiness of the sons reading the email and never notice that Vagnoni just told us that she knows exactly why her sons cut her off. Pay no attention to the missing explanation behind the curtain. A mother's account from abandoned parents. I was abandoned by my daughter 6 years ago this June. I received a text that said, "The keys are under the mat. I've moved out. Don't come looking for me. I never want to see you again. You have ruined my life." I got home and found my husband standing in her empty room. She had a prepared speech that she emailed to me. She did not even say mom or dad anywhere in it was blah, 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 or my husband's first name. She stopped communicating with me about 1 year after that. But each time I asked why I got the prepared speech or some slung together four-letter words that I didn't appreciate. All my husband said was, I was 18. She's 18. I was expecting this. I wasn't.
Damn.
What was in the prepared speech? Why did her father expect her to move out at 18? The mother has two different sources of explanations at her fingertips, and she turns to neither, nor does she repeat so much as a scrap of her daughter's allegations. So, strongly recommend if y'all like. It's a great read. It's significantly.
He doesn't go over it.
It's significantly longer. I don't think. Please don't take this as a
Too late.
How can I say this?
Already did. I'm already taking it that
Don't
way.
take this as like a.
I'm taking it exactly.
License that this is what Thor is. This is a 1-to-1 with Thor.
That's
I think this happens to all of us.
1-to-1.
So what I heard in Thor's story today was missing reasons. I was smug, and then all of this stuff happened. There's a disconnect there. And this happens to all of us, right?
Not me.
When someone does something mean to us, we say, oh my God, this came out of nowhere. I can't believe they did this. This is unfair. We say this stuff all the time. Like, we see it all the time. I was banned unfairly from the subreddit. I was banned from the Discord. This is unfair.
True.
Happens all the time. I got banned from chat. And so, like, in your life, this is the important thing, right? So why do we have these conversations? It's, I mean, like, who knows what really happened? I don't know. I don't know what's appropriate. I don't know what's inappropriate. I think that threats are too much. I really, really, really doubt that Thor has done anything to warrant the amount of psychological suffering that he's gone through. And a lot of the reason that people don't realize that is because when you're one person posting something in chat, once again, the avalanche doesn't feel responsible for the snowflake. I mean, the snowflake doesn't feel responsible for the avalanche, right? You're like, I just did this thing. It's not that big of a deal. But what you really have to think about is that thing you are adding on. So if someone is getting beat up by 15 people and each person kicks them 10 times and you go in and you give them one kick,
that's what you
how
guys
many
do to
bones
me.
they have broken is not dependent on your one kick, but it is one of the 150 kicks that they're getting. It is an aggregate responsible. This dogpiling stuff I don't think is healthy. Okay? That being said, we also, I think there's disconnects. So I think some of this stuff, kind of like we got to a couple of them, right? One is like, I'm trying to be logical, but it's not working in the right way. And if you experience that, then I think you need to reevaluate. And this is why it's so hard, is because it feels so counterintuitive. I'm being direct. I don't want to be emotionally manipulative. I think I am doing the right thing. Now, when you think you are doing the right thing and other people think you are doing the wrong thing, that is when you'll see this kind of escalation. And so the key thing that's missing is, the key thing that we're missing here is feedback. And it sounds like Thor did his best there too. We're like, you have to like talk to people. But the problem is, like, when you're dealing with trolls on the internet, talking to them doesn't work. So it's kind of like in a regular human society, we have one option to resolve things like this, which is communicating directly with the person who has a problem with us. Now we have a real problem because that is not an option in today's world anymore. It becomes way harder to do because people are just going to show up. They just want you to be wrong. They don't care. The last thing they want to do is show up and them be wrong. When you try to communicate with one of your haters, what is the likelihood that even if they're wrong, they're going to apologize to you? Very low. When y'all deal with people who are mad at you, how often do they apologize? Interestingly enough, the more wrong they are, the more you point it out to them, the more their psychological defense mechanisms get triggered, and the more they dig their heels in. How is this guy supposed to win? So I think you meet people where they're at. You know, like, I think it's hard. So as you get attacked over and over and over again, you start to get more and more and more burnt out. It's hard to do the right thing. You try this thing, you try this thing, you try that thing, you've tried everything, now you kind of give up. And I think that's like completely reasonable to feel that way. I think that's how we end up in those situations.
Based.
Yeah, so this is a great question. Maybe we'll do a video about this. Is there a common psychological explanation for having such a disconnect between your own and others' perception of your actions? Absolutely. So I pulled this. I wasn't sure if this was actually worth reading from because this is a bit extreme. So there's a text called Mentalization-Based Treatment for Personality Disorders. It's a great book.
Damn.
So I don't think Thor has a personality disorder. And I think that mentalization is a skill that is hard to grasp. If you don't know how to mentalize, it feels incredibly foreign. So mentalization-based treatment is very effective for personality disorders in particular. And the reason for that is because a common root of many personality disorders is the inability to understand someone else's perspective. So the missing reasons is about parents who get cut off by their kids. That's what the context is. And please don't like extrapolate from that Thor falls into that category, okay? I think it's
Too
in
late.
the ballpark.
Already extrapolated.
Huge difference of degree, what we're talking about here. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, like I mentioned, is that the more you get attacked, the more you will develop missing reasons. The angrier you are, the more defensive you are, the bigger your blind spots become in life, right? So when I have to defend myself, my mind automatically stops thinking about all the things that I did wrong. It thinks about all the things that I did right. When I go to my partner and I say, hey, you don't take out the trash, their first automatic response is, well, you don't take out the recycling. Does that make sense? It happens to everybody.
Okay.